Hello guys, welcome to Proxima What Ifs. So in this video, we will see, what if Deku was Isekai'd to Frieren world with immortal powers and harem system. If you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to show us some love by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world to us. Now, let's start the story. Chapter 1 Green Bolt, Old World. Ruined Waystone, late afternoon. The spear hit me clean through the ribs the second I arrived. No warning, no portal, just sky, a cold smell of pine, and a demon a face like a cracked mask sprinting at a screaming caravan. Instinct beat confusion. I stepped between the spear and the kids on the wagon, took the hit, and smiled because I felt the old spark answering. Die, then move. The world snapped to emerald. My body dropped. My afterglow didn't. A bright smear of me kept going, shoulder checking the demon and cratering it into a broken waystone. By the time my heart restarted and the wound knit with a hiss, the caravan guard was gawking and the air tasted like iron and static. Hi, I said, bending the spear in my hands until it cried. Bad day, I'll fix it. The demon yanked itself free and hissed. You won't stay dead, correct? I said, and flashed in. The afterglow caught up to me half a breath later. Green drag, like a comet tail turning one punch into three quick impacts. The mask face cracked further, shadow leaked. I kicked its back foot out, swept the spear shaft into a pin, and held until the caravan horses screamed past. So, nothing moved at the road bend, three travelers stepping into the fight without breaking stride. A warrior with a giant axe, broad-shouldered and careful. A young woman in a travel cloak, calm eyes, street. AFF low and steady 20s by the look and the way she carried silence. And an elf with hair like pale fire and patience that felt older than most cities. The elf didn't raise her hand. She simply looked at the demon. And it made a sound like frost snapping. Magic laced the earthen silver threads, almost lazy, and the demon's neck unspooled from its body like yarn. The head rolled to my boot. Thanks, I said, catching my breath. The elf's gaze slid to the hole in my shirt, to the blood not there anymore. Interesting. Understatement of the week, the warrior muttered. The woman with the staff took a step closer. You should sit. You just got run through. I flexed my hands. Got better. Obviously, the elf said, studying me like a puzzle she hadn't decided to solve yet. Name, Izuku, I said. I didn't add, Midoriya. Didn't add anything about home. Thinking about home in moments like these only ever hurt later. Frieren, the elf said, as if testing whether the syllables would mean anything to me. This is Fern, and Stark. Stark gave me a quick, honest nod. Fern's eyes didn't flinch from the wound that wasn't there. Professional. Good. Appreciate the assist, I said. I kind of appeared mid-spear. Stark blinked. Appeared. Long story, I said. Short version. I can't keep a good death. Frieren's mouth edged toward a smile that didn't quite land. We noticed. The caravan master stumbled over, bowing so hard his hat fell off. Thank you gods, thank you. We thought we were done. Not today, I said. Get behind us until the road forks. Frieren wa. Tched me say that like she was measuring the weight of my voice. Not the volume. The weight. Walk with us, she said. Already am. Dust Road, early evening. We took point. Stark's axe hummed when he rested it on his shoulder. Fern walked the center line, eyes everywhere, like a conductor holding a quiet orchestra together. Frieren kept pace beside me with the ease of a river that had forgotten how to hurry. You're new to this era, she said. I snorted. That obvious. Your clothes, your stance, your refusal to be surprised, Frieren said. People who've lived through too many wars stop reacting. But they choose not to be surprised because surprise costs time, and time kills people. That your experience talking or your age? I asked, and yeah, maybe I grinned when I said it. Fern coughed into her sleeve. Stark bit down on a laugh. Frieren looked at me for a long second. Yes, we walked. You didn't use a spell, Fern said. Not accusing. Curious. Not my style, I said. I let the world hit me first. Then I hit back better. That's not a plan, Stark said, then added, no offense. It's a rhythm, I said. Plan comes between beats. Frieren's eyes tracked a gull cutting across the pink sky. And when the plan fails? Die, I said lightly. And learn. Fern stopped walking for half a heartbeat. Not fear, exactly. Calculation. That's a dangerous habit. I don't recommend it recreationally. I said. It's expensive. Expensive? Frieren asked. Every time I come back, there's residue, I said, working my hands like I could stretch the word to the right shape. Afterglow. It's power that doesn't belong to the present. It lets me bend what just happened for a moment. But if I lean on it too hard, time starts leaning back. Fern's gaze flicked to Frieren. Frieren didn't look away from me. Show me later, she said. Not a request. Sure, I said. You buy dinner. I don't, she said. Fern does. Fern, I do. Stark laughed. Welcome to the team economy. Team, I echoed. Frieren tilted her head. Are you not already walking with us? I liked her. It was that simple. Village gate. Dusk. The village smelled like wet grain and relief. The caravan rolled through to cheers. People waved. A little kid in a patched coat saw the tear in my shirt and decided I was the coolest thing in 3 counties. Can't fault his taste. We took our pay in bread, stew, and a place near the fire. Stark found his way to a table with other big weapons. Fern handled the money with the casual terror of someone who had once balanced the world's smallest, strictest ledger. Frieren sat across from me and dismantled a loaf like it had offended her. So, she said between bites, immortality. Kind of, I said. I can die. It just doesn't stick. Does it hurt? Fern asked. Every time, I said. Then why were you smiling? She asked. I shrugged. Because I got to the kids before the spear did. That counts. Fern looked down at our bowl as if trying to hide that the answer landed somewhere she hadn't armored. Stark raised his cup in a little salute. Frieren finished the bread and folded her hands. How many times? Today, I said, thinking back. Once. But I've had streaks. How long do you think you can do it? She asked. As long as it takes, I said. I'm stubborn. And I've got reasons. She said. We all do. A bell rang near the gate. One of the villagers rushed in, breathless. Demon sign west of the Mill 2, maybe 3. We stood as one. Back to work, I said. West Mill, night wind. The mill wheel clacked like a nervous metronome. Moonlight made the stream look metallic. 2 demons crouched on the roof beams, lean and hungry. A third paced along the riverbank, feet not quite touching water. Water walker, Stark said softly. Take roof or river? I asked. Frieren's eyes went silver for a blink. River is more interesting. Good, I said, and stepped into the stream. Cold bit up to my knees. The river demon smiled at me like I'd just volunteered to drown. It swept a hand and the water rose, a black sheet with teeth. I didn't dodge. The impact was full body. The world went vertical, then very briefly nothing. Then, die, then move. The afterglow tore free, a second me sprinting sideways along the riverbank, dragging the wave with it and smashing it against the mill wheel. The blast turned teeth to spray. I came back inhaling river and lightning. See, I said, spitting water. Fun. Reckless, Fern said from the bank, but her staff was already moving, precise and precise again. A clean bolt picked a roof demon out of the dark. Stark leapt from a cart to finish it with one clean, jagged arc of his axe. The second roof demon dropped behind Fern. Fern, Stark shouted. She didn't flinch. She timed. Staff low to high, not for the demon but for its shadow. The blow connected with the moment before it landed, a perfect intercept that made the demon's jaw bounce. I was already there, afterglow catching up home to its chest, pushing it off the roof and into the river like bad laundry. Fern's got hands, I said, grinning. Fern, cheeks pink. Focus. The water walker hissed, forming a lance of river and moonlight. Frieren finally moved. She raised a finger. 1. The air went thinner than winter. A line drew itself between her hand and the demon's throat. So clean it looked like a page crease. The demon tried to step back. The line followed. Its head stayed behind. Silence swelled. Water crashed down around my knees. Frieren looked at the steam curling off my shirt. Expensive, she repeated. I'd like my demonstration now. That was your demonstration, I said. Her eyes flicked to the green smear fading around my shoulders. No, ours. I blinked. You want to sink, she said simply. Stark coughed. Is this a magic lesson or? Frieren elbowed him without looking. Frieren's gaze didn't waver. There's an ancient curvature spell I haven't used in too long. It requires a moment of impossible continuity. What you do when you die might mimic that. Romantic, I said, smiling. Fine. How do we anchor it? She stood toe to toe with me, close enough that I could see the constellations her eyes kept, and said, absolutely deadpan, kiss me. Stark inhaled stew. Frieren. What? It's an anchor, Frieren said, as if explaining why sky is above ground. Emotional contact lowers friction. If you'd prefer another contact point. Kiss works, I said quickly. That was fast, Frieren muttered. Time-sensitive magic, I said, and yeah. I was grinning way too wide for a guy about to let an ancient elf evaluate his technique. Frieren's mouth was cool and careful. Not shy. Precise. Like she didn't waste motion even here. For a heartbeat, no. For a layer above heartbeat, the world stretched. The in-between where my afterglow lived opened like a book. Silver threads bloomed everywhere, each one a path a spell could take if it wasn't stuck being logical. Now, she whispered against my lip. I pushed the afterglow into those threads. They lit green. She gestured. The curvature spell unfurled like a ribbon soaked in stars, bending around every broken beam and water eddy, locking the remaining demon in a cage of lines that had never met before in this century. It howled. The cage closed. Silence crashed down again, but T's time it was the heavy silence of a solved equation. We separated. Neither of us looked away for a moment. Then she cleared her throat and stepped back just enough to be impolite in exactly the right way. Purely pragmatic, she said. Cool, I said. Do purely pragmatic kisses always make time slow down? A micro-expression something like amusement grazed with nostalgia touched her mouth. Occasionally. Frieren was looking anywhere but at us. Stark had found the sky intensely interesting. Team economy, I said, because words needed somewhere to go. Don't spend it all at once, Frieren said. And the corner of her mouth betrayed her. Mill porch, later. We let the village calm down again. I took a seat on the old porch and wrung River out of my shirt. Frieren leaned against the post beside me, arms folded. You risked yourself casually, she said. Not accusation, observation. I risked myself specifically, I corrected. Casual gets people hurt. Her eyes softened a fraction, then narrowed again. And if you stop coming back, then I'll have already made it worth it, I said. Look, you don't have to approve. It's not about approval, she said. It's about how people learn to lean on you. If you encourage that, they don't grow their own edges. I stared at her, the honesty hitting clean. You keep your team sharp. Someone has to, she said. Then, almost too quiet, someone has to keep you from spending your life like small change. I didn't have a better answer than a nod. Stark clomped up the porch steps, sat on the opposite side with a grunt, and pointed his chin at the river. I'm not kissing you, he said solemnly. Noted, I said. We'll keep our anchors professional. He huffed a laugh. Frieren actually smiled. Frieren stood at the rail, watching the water with the patience of a cliff. Your afterglow responded to an old framework, she said, thoughtful. It implies your power isn't at war with this world's magic. It's compatible. That good or bad? I asked. Dangerous, she said. Compatibility invites escalation. From us or from them? I asked. Yes, she said again, and I started to enjoy how often she got to be right. Camp outside the north gate, past midnight. The fire was small, the stars big. We camped just beyond the lights, where the road curved into black firs. I took first watch because I wasn't likely to stay still anyway. After a while, footsteps padded soft behind me. Couldn't sleep, I asked without turning. I don't sleep much, Frieren said, settling beside me. She had a blanket draped like a suggestion rather than warmth. You asked earlier if it was my experience or my age. The answer I gave was lazy. I've been accused of worse, I said. Time is peculiar for me, she said simply. I can a century passing a mountain and a decade in a village. People leave. The next time I see them, they've become statues with skin. I let the fire pop a few times. People keep becoming statues around me too, I said. Not because of time. Because I'm fast. Because I choose moments over memories. It's not the same, but it rhymes. She glanced sideways. You are not from here. No, I said, but I'm here. She accepted that with a little nod. There's a story about a demon that eats immortals, she said after a while. It grew clever by learning all the endings it couldn't have. I don't know how true the story is. But folk tales persist the way weeds do. Good to know, I said. All floss. You joke, she said, not unkindly. I breathe jokes, I said. It's how I keep fear from getting greedy. She considered that. Don't starve it so completely that it forgets you respect it. That from experience or age? I asked. Experience, she said, but the age helps me not to lie about it. We sat there, letting the quiet stop trying to impress us. You didn't ask me where I came from, I said finally. I asked who you are, she said. The other answer takes longer and helps less. That's weirdly kind, I said. Purely pragmatic, she said dryly. I laughed. Couldn't help it. Edge of the pines, pre-dawn. I took a walk to bleed off restlessness. The trees were dark-handed around the road. The sky had the color of a bruise just before morning. Something watched. I didn't hear it. I felt the pressure of being valued by the wrong kind of hunger. It brushed the edges of my core like someone testing the lock before they learn how to pick it. Found you, a voice said from a nowhere that wasn't far. Not words, exactly. Meaning rubbing against bone. Get in line, I said softly. The presence smiled with its teeth closed. You return to yourself. Delicious. We'll learn your recipe. And then it was gone, not by moving but by deciding I wasn't worth the first bite yet. Predators with patience have always annoyed me more than the loud ones. When I got back to camp, Fern was up, kettle already thinking about steam. Stark snored like a small, friendly landslide. Frieren's eyes were open even if her posture said otherwise. Company, she asked without moving. Rumors true, I said. Something that eats immortals licked the window. Fern's jaw tightened. It knows you now. Everything knows everything eventually, I said, taking the kettle off before it boiled over. We make it a bad habit. Frieren sat up. We're heading north along the causeway. There's a flooded span with poor visibility. Ambush country. Great, I said. I love making bad habits die young. Fern handed me a tin cup. Don't spend your life like small change, she said, quiet but not soft. I won't, I said. I'll invest. She gave me a look that said I was ridiculous and, under that, fine, but I'm auditing you. North Road, sunrise. We moved early, the kind of pace that says, we're not running, while making the landscape hustle anyway. The flooded causeway shimmered ahead, reeds hissing, birds complaining like broken hinges. A single figure stood on the far bend, too still to be human. Too elegant to be anything we'd enjoy meeting. General, Stark asked. Frieren shook her head. Something that used to be a priest. Or pretended well. It raised a hand in greeting. Negotiation, I asked. Trap, Fern said. Cool, I said, already walking. Let's spring it politely. Politely, Stark whispered. I flashed him a grin over my shoulder. I'm very well-mannered when people try to murder me. We closed to speaking distance. The not priest's mouth opened like the door of a tomb. You return to yourself, it said in a voice that had borrowed too many sermons. Return to us. Hard pass, I said. I'm allergic to cults, and to sharing. Its eyes smiled. Its face did not. We will peel your returns and lick the layers. Buddy, I said, rolling my shoulders. That might be the worst flirting I have ever heard. Second worst, Frieren corrected, not looking at me. Rude, I muttered, and stepped forward, feeling the afterglow pull. Ing at my shoulder blades like wings I hadn't earned yet. Fern, Frieren said, fingertip lifting. On my breath. On it, Fern answered, staff aligning with the smallest tilt of Frieren's chin. Tark set his axe the way you set a promise. I glanced at Frieren. Pragmatic anchors. Later, she said, eyes bright like frost catching sunrise. For this one, try not to die unless it's instructive. Deal, I said, and let the world hit me first. The not priest gestured. The water lifted. The river's skin turned to glass. I sprinted into my own reflection and threw it afterglow shattering the mirror into a dozen green Izukus that hit from too many angles at once. The glass river tried to decide which me to drown. It picked wrong. Behind me, Frieren's silver thread curved, elegant and old, snapping the trap's hinge at a point it didn't know it had. Fern's staff beat the timing flat, 2 casts in the space of 1 breath, and Stark made music out of momentum. The fight lasted a handful of heartbeats and all of a life. Clean, cinematic, expensive enough to remember. When it was done, the Knot Priest wasn't. It dragged itself together, not with healing but with faith in its own persistence. And spat a blessing that tasted like rust. Soon, it said through a broken jaw, "Our eater will make a hymn of you. Tell it to bring a dictionary," I said. It keeps misusing the word ours. It lunged for one last petty cut. I stepped in, let it hit me, and died. The world went quiet and green. Die, then move. The afterglow bent backward across the last 4 seconds, collected Frieren's thread and Fern's breath and Stark's weight, and paid them out in a single, stupidly perfect punch that landed not on the Knot Priest but on the hinge of the spell that was keeping it smug. The air snapped. The Knot Priest fell apart in the way things do when they never learn to be whole. I came back to myself on one knee, laughing because that had been clean. Fern's hand was already on my shoulder, steadying without hovering. "Instructive?" she asked. "Educational," I said, and meant worth it. Frieren stepped close, studying the space I'd just abused. "You threaded 3 moments." "4, I said, but I only admitted to 3 so I'd have a spare. Her eyes flicked to my mouth. "Pragmatic," she said dryly. "Learning from the best," I said. Stark leaned on his axe. "So, we're keeping him." Fern looked at Frieren. Frieren didn't look away from me. "For now," she said. "Until he stops being educational." "I'm a lifelong student," I said. "Tragic," Fern murmured, but there was a smile hiding in it. We started walking again, the causeway behind us, the road ahead shouldering mountains. The wind shifted and brought the smell of snow from far away, and underneath it all I could still taste the faint metallic sweetness of a predator's patience. Somewhere out there, something that 8 immortals had just learned my rhythm. Good. I had more songs. End of Chapter 1. Chapter 2 Names that live too long. North Causeway, morning fog. The reeds whispered like they knew gossip that could kill. Water stretched in rectangles where the road should have been, broken by narrow, sinking stones. The world smelled like iron and wet rope. We moved single file. Frieren stepping light as punctuation, Fern measuring the path with the tip of her staff, Stark carrying the day like it weighed something. Something moved under the surface. Not fish. Intent. 2 left, 1 right, I murmured. Fern's eyes cut sideways. "You hear that? Feel it," I said. "Like someone trying to remember my name with their teeth." "Great," Stark muttered. "Your fan club's growing." A scream knifed across the fog. Female. Close, not the theatrical kind. The water puckered 30 paces ahead where the causeway widened. "Run," I said, and ran. Collapsed span. Seconds later. She was going under when I slid in. A young adult mage with sea glass eyes and a braid plastered to her cheek. Hands clawing at a vortex that had opinions about drowning her. The spell circle she'd carved into the air was half lit and fading. A second girl on the bank, same age, white hair cut short under. A hoodwas trying to freeze a path and swearing at physics. I had it. The water mage coughed, very much not having it. "You're allowed to be rescued," I said, and went low, letting the water punch through me so the afterglow could catch and yank the vortex sideways. It worked for 1 heartbeat. Then the river decided it wanted to. The current folded us both. Cold raced up and down. Fingers found my jacket and didn't let go. "On 3, I said into the rush, not sure if she could hear. 1, 3, she gurgled, and laughed, because some people meet death and flirt back. We spun against a drowned pillar. I put my palm to the river like I was greeting a dog that could bite, and let the afterglow smear out of my chest, green arcs catching eddies as if they had handles. The stream stuttered, the vortex hiccuped. "Name," I said. "I like knowing who I'm saving." "Kane," she said, coughing. "I'm very savable." "Deku," I said. "I'm very saved." Her eyes flashed like sunlight through a bottle. She shoved her forearm against mine, hard. "Need an anchor. Emotional contact helps. Sorry in advance." "For WH, I started." She kissed me quick, bright, unapologetic, and the river clicked. The current's memory turned tactile in my hands, as if water had been taking notes and finally handed them over. The spell circle bloomed back to life, and the vortex flickered as if embarrassed to be seen. "Okay," I said when we surfaced. "That works. You're not mad?" she asked, breathless. "Mad that you lived. I'm not that kind of guy." "No, the kiss," she said, pushing wet hair off. Her face with a grin that could pass for sunshine in bad weather. "I use them like paperclips during emergencies." "Then keep a box," I said, and with that we pulled. The river's last 10 seconds too. RNED elastic between US tidal lock and we rewound the collapsing tunnel just enough to slam it sideways. The current snapped into a clean gutter past the stones. On the bank, the white-haired girl yelled, "Kane!" and started toward us, boots sliding. "Lawine!" Kane whooped back. "I'm kissing strangers and also not dead." "That order," Lawine shouted, "is exactly the problem." Demons broke the surface like knives, mouths full of river. I hit the nearest with an afterglow shoulder check that made the water around it forget how to hold a shape. It tried to heal. Kane twisted her wrist, and the river remembered being sharp. Done. Fern stepped onto a fresh ice plate Lawine had thrown and didn't hesitate. Staff up, breath short. 2 precise blasts turned a leaping demon into so much wet regret. Stark, delighted to have footing, met the third with an axe swing so honest the thing died of good manners. The fog tore itself apart and realized it was outnumbered. Reed Road, near the ferry stakes. We made fast introductions while checking for more teeth. "I'm Kane," she said again to the group, because the first time had been while drowning. "Water mage. Best at being average. Professional at not doing that." "Lawine," the white-haired one said, hand on a sling bag that clinked like a portable avalanche. "Ice mage. Best at winning bets." Frieren said. Stark said. Fern said. Her gaze stuck to where Kane's hand was still on my wrist. Kane noticed, squeezed once playful, not territorial and let go with a smile. "Deku," I said. Lawine squinted. "Like, what?" "Nickname," I said. "Long story, short version. I break and then don't." Kane looked delighted, like a tide pool that refuses to evaporate. "That one's new," I said. "I'll keep it." Lawine's eyes flicked to Frieren. "You vouch." Frieren tilted her head. "He's educational. That code for fun and stupid?" Lawine asked. "Sometimes," Fern said. I grinned. "I'm exceptionally good at the first and practicing restraint on the second." A low chuckle ran through the group like we'd agreed not to say out loud that we'd just bonded over maybe dying in the same direction. It's a thing teams do. Humor like wax sealing a letter you'll open later. "Why are you two out here?" Stark asked, checking the ferry stakes for sabotage. "Escort job," Kane said. "We're taking a courier to a way temple west of Hiruater than advertised. He ran ahead when we fell through." Lawine scowled. "He ran before that." "Optimism," Kane said kindly. "He ran optimistically." "Optimism is just denial with cute shoes." Lawine shot back, then softened when Kane nudged her. "Fine. We make a path. You coming?" Fern looked to Frieren. Frieren did the thing where she measured not the request but the cost. "Yes," she said. "The road owes us a safer mile than it gave." Kane bumped my shoulder. "Guess you're stuck with me a little longer," she said, smile tilted. "Tragic," I said. Ulrea. Dai braced for how much brighter the day got with her around. Flooded gallery, noon sun through fog. We built a tunnel out of moving water. Kane sketched sigils into the air and into the stream and into the parts of the river that aren't either, humming under her breath. Lawine frosted the edges so they stopped arguing. I walked the middle with my hands out, palms skimming current, letting the tidal lock tell me where the last mistakes were. "Left wall is sulking," I said. Kane laughed and flicked her fingers. "Be nice to your seniors," she told the water. The left wall stopped sulking. Fern watched the dance with that measured fascination she uses when deciding whether to trust a bridge. "You two are very improvisational." Which is polite for, "You don't have a plan," Lawine said. "We do. It's just made of smaller plans." "Rhythm," I said. "Plan comes between beats." Fern's mouth did that thing where it almost smiled and then chose competency instead. "If you say, die and learn, I will hit you with my staff." "Staying alive today," I promised. New trick. Live and still learn. Frieren walked at our pace without breaking it. Your anchor with Kane, she said to me. You felt the water's memory. Like grooves, I said. We slid the song back a few notes. It's not replicable on stone or air, Frieren mused. But with ice, I refuse to be kissed as a science experiment, Lewine said flatly. Noted, I said, hands up. Kane leaned in to whisper. Let her pretend she doesn't think about it. I heard that, Lewine said. You were meant to, Kane sang, bright as a bell. Stark, who had been quietly carrying 4 people's gear and the concept of modesty, cleared his throat. Contact 2 o'clock. The courier had chosen the world's worst hiding spot. A knuckle of root sticking out over a deep pocket, where anyone with eyes would look. Tan cloak, thin frame, a package strapped to his chest like an apology. You left your mages, Fern said as we got within lecture range. He flinched. They fell. You left before we fell, Lewine said, ice already sketching a path toward him. Optimistically, Kane's hand brushed my knuckles. We'll adopt him temporarily, she said to no one in particular. Temporarily, Lewine echoed, meaning until he stops crying. Package, I said. What's inside? He clutched it tighter. A hymn. Kidding. Inscribed spell, Frieren said. Eyes going distant the way they do when she walks into a library behind her face. You call it a hymn. What does it do? The courier licked his lips. It remembers a path. For people who don't. Fern and Frieren traded a glance that contained a semester of arguments. Stark nodded slowly. I just felt the hairs on my arms stand up. Sometimes the world composes a theme on the fly. Move, I said. If something wants immortals today, it'll also want the sheet music. Ambush in the reeds, just when it gets easy. The first arrow hit the water tunnel and spun away, surprised to be wet. The second found the courier's strap at an angle and tried to cut theology in half. I stepped between and let it bury in my shoulder. Pain popped white. The afterglow tugged like it wanted to run and I didn't. Instead I held it until the pressure built behind my ribs, then flung it forward in a sheet. The tunnel surged, water stiffening just enough to become a shield. Archers, Stark said, eyes slitting toward the low hummocks to the east. 3, 4, Fern corrected, staff already sketching a soundless, clean arc. The first archer went boneless behind a reed. Seacon. Dee's bowstring snapped itself against their ear hard enough to make them rethink careers. Lewine threw a snow coin that popped into a knee-high drift midair. The third archer vanished in powder and cursing. The fourth, smarter than the average culprit, didn't fire. The water to our right bulged. A demon rose slick, tall, mouth like a drowned well. Kane's voice went low. You don't belong here. It grinned. Neither do you. Rude, she said, and spun a sigil that made the river remember being rain. It worked until the demon decided to be a roof. Do not, Lewine said pointedly to the demon, as if refusing it rights. She kicked an ice plate so cleanly it took the demon off at the ankles. It hovered on habit and malice. I took the habit. Stark took the malice. Frieren took the rest. Courier flattened himself to the tunnel floor and whimpered. Fern crouched beside him, efficient. Breathe, she said. If you pass out, I'll be annoyed and you won't enjoy waking up. He nodded, eyes saucer wide, and inhaled like a student doing the problem right. Arrows stopped. The reeds quieted. The demon decided we were boring and tried to leave in 4 directions at once. Frieren pinched the air, and all 4 changed their mind. We stood breathing hard enough to remind ourselves we were still here. Kane wiped water from her mouth and glanced at me. Thanks for the loan, she said, tapping 2 fingers over her heart. 4. Your rhythm. She twirled wet hair around a knuckle and let it go. I ride waves. You slap them into shape and ask for an apology. Team economy, I said. Spend it slowly, Fern said without looking up from the courier's bandage. Kane tilted her head, watching the way Fern watched me, and that bright grin softened into something kinder. You're the one who keeps everyone sharp. Fern's eyes flicked to her. Someone has to. Good job, Kane said, like a medal handed over without ceremony. Fern didn't blush, but the air around her felt slightly warmer. Fairy Temple, late afternoon. The Way Temple wasn't much. Half a roof, 3 pillars, and a beat-up shrine stone wearing moss like a shawl. But the place had a feeling of kept promises, and that counts more than walls. We ringed the space. Kane and Lewine ran a water and ice perimeter. Frieren set threads that looked idle and weren't. Stark oiled the squeak out of his axe like he was taking nerves out of himself by proxy. Frieren examined the courier's package with upright, careful hands. Huh? I asked, nodding at it. Spell you sing, the courier said, small but steady now. It doesn't care about voice. It cares about intention. What intention? To go where you promised to go, he said. Even if you forget the path. Frieren's gaze slid to me. I pretended not to notice and failed. Try it, she told the courier. He opened the case, heart in throat. Inside. A narrow slab, lines carved like staves, runes marching in time. He set it on the shrine and put a hand over it. Home, he whispered, voice breaking on no particular note. The runes lit, one by one, like a street deciding to be lit again after years of blackout. The air hummed soft, resolving. Like it had been arguing with itself and finally picked a side. A path sketched itself through the temple floor and out the back, over scrub and into nothing. Good, Frieren said. Let's deliver it. The path pulsed. Something pulsed back. The temperature went down an opinion and a half. Reeds bowed the wrong way. The hair on my arms drew small, unhappy maps. Hunter, Lewine said flatly. Which kind? Stark asked, already moving to front. The kind that thinks patience is a weapon, I said, mouth gone dry. The immortal eater didn't show itself. It doesn't have to. It arrives by making time polite in all the wrong places. A shadow like a memory falling too long slipped over us. Kane's water circle trembled and tried to recite the last 10 seconds out of order. Lewine's ice grew flowers and then forgot it had. Frieren's threads vibrated at a frequency that looked like a smile and wasn't. Don't die, Frieren said to me from my left, not bothering to whisper. Wasn't planning to, I said, even though the thing made my core itch like a bad idea. It spoke not in words but in recipes. Return again, show me how. Consent is important, I told the air, because talking back to monsters is how I prove my courage. You don't have it. The shadow pressed down, testing angles like a chef tapping a melon. Frieren snapped a bright, invisible line. The pressure slid and came back nastier. Anchor, she said to me without turning. Yes or no? Kane's eyes lit. Me, she asked, gleeful. I laughed despite my teeth wanting to chatter. Yes to anchors, I said, and no to being eaten. Kane grabbed my collar and kissed me like a storm that decided to be gentle. The Titalock flared. Water in the air, in our blood, in the temple stone remembered being rain the day the shrine was first raised. For one breath, the eater's shadow couldn't find what time we were in. Now, Frieren said, and braided her ancient curvature through that single stupidly perfect beat. Fern stacked her breath on top. Timing unapologetically exact. Lewine punted a glacier at the concept of persistence while Stark went through anything that still believed in its own ribs. I stepped into the shade and let it try to eat me. It bit down on Afterglow and nearly choked. Dying, when you're ready for it, is like putting a coin in the universe's vending machine. I paid and the machine jammed. Green light spilled everywhere. I grabbed as much of it as I could and hammered it into the eater's pressure. It didn't scream. It reconsidered. Educational. Fern's voice carried across a distance that had gotten philosophical. Wildly, I said from somewhere I hadn't reoccupied yet. When I came back, things were still ringing. The path glowed a little dimmer. The air felt guilty. The eater had withdrawn, not defeated. Not even hurt. Just curious with a new flavor. Soon, it implied from nowhere. We banquet with patience. Bring snacks, I said, because I refused to let dread have the last line. Temple steps, sunset. We sat. You have to, after that kind of almost. Kane tucked herself onto the step above me, knees hugged to her chest, hair drying in soft curves. She bumped my shoulder with her foot. So, she said, am I in your club now? The Kiss and Rewind Club. It's not exclusive, I said. Membership requires good timing and consent. Little Harem Club, she teased, big grin. But the question under it was real. Do I count? And if I do, is it just a trick or something you'll carry? I met her eyes and let mine be simple. If you want in, you're in. But not as loot, as Kane. She let out a breath like she'd been holding it for a day. Okay, she said, soft and pleased. Then, punchy again. Also, I'm very fun. I noticed, I said. Team economy appreciates high morale. Frieren came back from checking the perimeter and paused, seeing us. She looked at Kane, then at me, and I watched the math happen behind her eyes, jealousy waving from far off, respect shouldering in front of it. Kane offered a quick salute. He's not a toy, she said, weirdly formal for 1 second. I like him. I'll be good. I didn't ask you to be good, Frieren said, dry. I asked you to be careful. Kane smiled, real grateful and not performative. Deal. Frien's gaze slid to me. And you? I'll invest, I said. She rolled her eyes. I'm still auditing. We shared that small, dumb smile you make when the scary thing is outside the fence for another hour. Frieren sat beside me on the lower step, face tipped to the failing light. Your core reacted differently, she said. It wanted to be copied. It wanted to make a point, I said. I hate being defined by what hunts me. That will be a problem, she said. Good, I said. I do my best work with problems. Arrogant, Lewine observed from behind us, flopping down and stealing Stark's canteen. She drank and passed it to Kane, who managed to spill only some on me, probably on purpose. Confident, I corrected. Playboy, she added, but with the tolerant exasperation of someone who had already started counting me inconveniently into her plans. You don't have to kiss me, I said, deadpan. I wasn't planning to, she said. Then, after a beat, yet, Kane cackled. Stark pretended to be offended at the canteen theft and failed. Campfire on the ferry bank, later. We cooked fish Frieren mana. G'd to pull out of a river that was trying to be poetic. Kane told some story about losing a scarf to a romantic wind. Lewine roasted the wind. Stark gave practical advice about scarf retention protocols. The courier slept like a felled tree, the hymn slab under his hand. Frieren watched the fire until it didn't know what to do with all that attention and burned better. Talk to me, she said to me without looking up. About fear. Which one? I asked. The long one, she said. I poked at the coals. I'm not scared of dying. It's a tool in my belt that bites. I'm scared of looking up on E-Day and realizing I've turned everyone I love into practice. Silence held the shape of that for us. Kane leaned into my shoulder, warm and steady. We're not practice, she said. I know, I said. But habits eat definition if you let them. Frien's voice was quiet. Then don't let them. Helpful, I said, but not sarcastic. It is, she insisted. You think your power is the point. It isn't. It's a lever. Decide what you're moving. Frieren's eyes found mine across the fire. And decide which pieces you refuse to move. People, I said. Good, she said. Keep saying it out loud until the habit listens. Lewine stretched her legs out toward the heat, boots almost in the fire like she was daring comfort to scald her. I pick fights with snow so I don't pick them with Kane, she said. Systems exist. Kane beamed at her like she'd confessed something secretly romantic. I pick fights with rivers so Lewine feels useful. We laughed. The edge took a step back into the dark and sulked there. Frien's watch. Near midnight Pav. Frieren. He sleeps badly shifts like a man trying to bargain with ghosts. Frieren poured water from canteen to cup, counting heartbeats in the pause between each ripple. Counting kept the world measurable. Deku made it less so. That was the problem and the draw. She looked at Kane, who snored exactly 3 times in a row like a practice routine. Lewine didn't snore. Lewine would never give the knight that satisfaction. Frieren's eyes were open on the other side of the fire, a private constellation. Jealous. Frieren's voice was gentle and surgical. The way she asks questions she expects answers to. Frieren considered lying and didn't. Not exactly. I don't like reckless advantages. I don't like him dying as punctuation. He is trying not to, Frieren said. He thinks that's heroism, Frieren said. I think it's a habit. And habits eat definition, Frieren echoed, which was annoying and fair. You're allowed to ask for better. Frieren watched Deku's hand twitch like he was catching a falling cup in his dream. If I ask, he'll listen. That's the problem. Because then you own part of the risk. Frieren asked. Frieren exhaled. Quote, because then I'll have to decide when to let him not listen. They were quiet for a long line of crickets. Do you like him? Frieren asked eventually. Fern didn't answer. The question was Adora. She was very good at not opening doors before she decided the room was safe. I like his outcomes, she said finally. And that he doesn't make me drag the world into place alone. Then tell him what pace you can tolerate. Frieren said. He likes constraints. They give him something to kick. Fern allowed a small smile. You say that like you've already written a curriculum. I'm improvising, Frieren said. Which is what she always said right before revealing she'd planned this 200 years ago. Fern took second watch into her hands and held it like a cup she refused to spill. River Road, gray dawn. We broke camp early. The hymn path waited, dimmer but obedient. The courier looked less like a scared boy and more like a person who had decided to finish the job or be buried neatly trying. Kane walked beside me, every third step brushing her shoulder against mine like a metronome set to flirting. Lawine kept correcting the path's temperature by kicking snow into ruts that insisted on being mud out of spite. You will get bored, Lawine said to me without warning. With what? Being alive forever, she said. Even if you're not actually forever, it tastes like it in the mouth. Then I'll learn new recipes, I said. She squinted. Don't be cute. I can be cute and write, I said. Kane clapped once. He can multitask. Fern shot me a look over her shoulder. You can also walk without talking. Scientifically unproven, I said, then softened. Later, she nodded, satisfied. A path, intention, promise. We were moving the right pieces. A whisper brushed the back of my neck. Return. The eater again, distant, patient, learning my tempo the way a musician listens to a rival against a wall. Soon, I told it under my breath, which is sometimes a prayer and sometimes a threat. We crested a little hill. The way temple we were delivering to showed itself in the bowl beyond, proud in ruins. A handful of villagers waited with lanterns in the Aya. Sigh desperation of people who have chosen to live where it's beautiful and unwise. The courier squared his shoulders. Ready, he said, and I believed him this time. We went down together. Bowl of the second temple, mid-morning. Deposits are rarely the exciting part. Delivery is repetition with meaning you hammered into it on the way. We laid the hymn slab on the second shrine. The path hummed, lighter now. Like it had been allowed to be a different song in a different place. The villagers cried. Kane cried with them a little because she's good like that. Lawine looked elsewhere to give privacy. Stark developed something in his eye. Fern catalogued the exact toll and decided we had paid fairly. Frieren watched me watch the people and filed the observation in a cabinet I'll never see. Next, Stark asked. Not because he wanted to hurry, but because momentum keeps grief from drying into brittle shapes. Next, Frieren said. Kane slipped her hand into mine in the no-drama way you pass a tool across a bench. We're going north too, she said. There's a blizzard that needs to lose an argument. Lawine's grin was wicked. And money that needs to change owners. You're welcome to walk with us, Frieren said before anyone else could. For a time, Kane echoed, and leaned in to kiss my cheek, quick and casual. She didn't need to make a fuss to prove anything. It still made heat climb my neck like I was a teenager with no kills on my resume. Fern pretended to be very busy with Stark's pack. I looked at all of them near edges and their centers and felt the quick, greedy happiness of being in the same frame with people you'd be dangerous for. Somewhere, the Immortal Eater turned a page. Let's go pick a fight with the weather, I said. And we did. End of Chapter 2. Chapter 3 The Golden Echo. Approach to Altenstadt, late morning. The town looked sunstruck. Roofs and lintels glowed with a soft, wrong light. Wind carried a faint chime, like coins swaying from string. Closer. The shine resolved into gold dust on every surface, grain sacks, doorframes, a dog's collar. The bell tower at the square's center had turned the color of a crown. Pretty, Lawine said. Hate it. Kane dipped a finger along a fence rail and winced. That's not leaf. That's memory. Fern's grip tightened on her staff. Explain. It sticks where a story's thick, Kane said. Like tears that forgot to fall. I glanced at Frieren. She was already looking past the shine, eyes half-lidded, measuring a century I couldn't see. Matched shadow? I asked. An imitation, she said. Close enough to be insulting. We passed a shop where every tool on the wall wore a thin skin of gold. A hammer's head whispered when the wind touched it. Did that just? Stark began. Yeah, I said quietly. It did. Altenstadt Square, noon. People moved in careful lines, as if their steps could take varnish off the day. In the square, 10 golden statues waited, men, women, a child on a barrel. A baker caught mid-laugh. All of them turned toward the bell tower. The chime on the air wasn't metal at all. It was voices, worn thin. Help, a statue breathed. Kane's hand found mine without fuss. Lewine scowled at the tower like it owed her money. Fern walked to the nearest figure and examined the seam where gold met skin because there was a seam. The man's wrist below the cuff was still flesh and pulse. They're not fully transmuted, Fern said. Relief was a blade with etiquette. Something is holding the rest of them hostage. Value, Frieren said, gaze flicking to the tower's door. The demon is weighing it, turning what matters into something it understands. Price, I said. Worse, she said. Appraisal. A woman in a headscarf approached, eyes ringed red. Are you travelers? Frieren said gently. Tell me when it started. 3 days, the woman said. Statues began to whisper things they loved. My husband. Her voice shook. He tells our son to go on that fishing trip. Over and over. He never went. He always said later. The gold thickens when the bell rings. Kane's jaw set. Where is your son now? With the other children. Inside the chapel. We don't let them hear it. Lewine jerked her chin at the bell tower. We should break the bell. The bell isn't the instrument, Frieren said. It's a suggestion. Hit the suggestion. Then, Lewine muttered. I squeezed Kane's hand and let go. We'll fix it, I told the woman. Stay away from the square when you hear screaming. The woman nodded like people do when faith is the only luggage left. Fern looked at Frieren. Frieren didn't answer the question on her face. She started for the tower door, and we went with her because momentum is a vote. Bell tower stairs, the shift before a storm. Dust lay thick on the steps. Not neglect, gold, it whispered as we climbed, words without verbs, names without faces. Worth, rubbed into powder. Don't inhale, Fern warned. I moved my afterglow tight against my skin, a green slicker over whatever the tower wanted to turn me into. Stark climbed behind me with that deliberate calm that suggests he'd like a problem to behave. Halfway up, a voice spoke from the landing wall like mold learning to talk. You'll fetch a high him. I'm priceless, I said. Ask anyone. You mistake price and worth, the wall answered, self-satisfaction like tarnish. Do I? I stopped. Or do you? The voice smiled in the mortar. Prove it. Don't, Fern murmured. Won't. I promised, and kept going. At the top, the chamber opened into sun. The bell hung still. Every surface glittered like a bad idea. A figure stood in the light's center. Not a priest or a soldier. A clerk tall, spare, dressed in the tidy fussiness of so. Me one who files other people into right angles. Where its face should be, a flat plate of animated gold reflected our shapes badly, as if the metal didn't believe in us. Appraiser, Frieren said, conversational. Archivist. It corrected, pleased with itself. I keep what matters. You keep it from living, Frieren said. Living is messy, the appraiser said. Mess devalues. I stepped forward. You stealing the town's stories to make your tower pretty. Pretty is incidental, it said. I put value where it cannot be lost. Value grows where it can be lost, I said. The appraiser tilted its plate in my direction. Interested. You came pre-priced. Stark lifted his axe. What's that supposed to mean? It means he returns, the appraiser said, voice like wax and bookkeeping. Things that return are worth more. Ask any collector. I rolled my shoulder. Ask any friend. They'll tell you it's not the returning. It's the reason. I will weigh your reason, it said, and raised its hand. Bell tower. First exchange. The air filled with dust that wasn't dust. Memories flaked into glitter. 100 small goodbyes broken down into particles that stuck where you were soft. The appraiser's hand turned a page, and my bones rang with a sound like coins being counted too fast. Down, Fern snapped. I didn't go down. I went through. The dust tried to thicken around me, my afterglow shoved it into a wake. A green channel cut through a gold river. Stark moved in that channel, ducking a lattice that wanted to be the price of his courage. Frieren lifted 2 fingers. Her spell didn't fly straight. It curved a silver stitch through glitter, bending around rules just out of embarrassment. It grazed the appraiser's shoulder and made something in its posture misalign. Interesting, it said, but a crack had appeared near the edge of its faceplate where reflection became refusal. Lewine's snow coin pinged off the bell. The bell gave the smallest, spiteful note. Con. E's water pulled dust out of the air and turned it to clumps that fell. Fern's staff tapped once, twice, 3 times. Each tap broke a thread leading from the appraiser to a statue below. Stop, the appraiser said. You are making the ledger untidy. Good, I said, and hit it. The afterglow made a second me arrive before my fist, a smear of green that struck the crack. The faceplate faltered and then thickened. The appraiser laughed. You pay, I gain. A perfect model. A parasite is not a model, Frieren said. It's an error with good manners. Dust coalesced around me, fast. Gold try. Ed to anchor to the places my life ran hot sternum, throat, eyes. I let myself die, then move. Green burst. The dust lost its cohesion, confusion sparkling in the air as if disbelieving it had ever meant anything. I came back already inside the appraiser's reach. It reached for my core with a delicate, horrid patience. Don't, I told it. It did, of course. Frieren's paw, the line we draw. He moved like a person refusing to be measured. I have seen every kind of arrogance and most kinds of grace. Deku's is neither and both. He spends himself with the cheer of a child flipping a coin and the accounting of a general who knows exactly how many coins he can waste. The appraiser's magic had the smell of matched about its second hand, a counterfeit perfume that fools the room at first and then lingers sour. Matched understood value as isolation. This thing understood value as inventory. I am not kind to imitators. Don't rescue him, Fern said next to me, low. I exhaled. Why? Because he needs to show you he knows when not to die, she said. Or you'll make allowances forever. The bell tugged at the town. The appraiser reached with neat fingers for Deku's heart. He did not step back. Anchor, he said without turning. Ah, there it is. I walked to him. The dust tried to gild the hem of my robe and thought better of it. He looked at me the way mortals do when they want to tell the truth and skip payment. How do you want this to feel? I asked. Fast, he said, and smiled lopsided. Like we already decided it. I put my hand on his jaw. I kissed him without theatrics, letting old curvature find the seam in his afterglow and stitch there. The world took a breath like it hadn't expected us to be that sure. You kiss like someone who refuses to mourn before it's necessary, I thought. And almost said it aloud. Now, I whispered. He poured green into silver. The spell bent around the bell and the appraiser and the square, not to avoid them but to inkle. Ude their slick edges curving value back into context. Dust remembered it had been laughter and bread and names. Some of it fell. The rest clung rebelliously and had to be argued with. Fern's staff taw. PPED again a metronome making the town find its beat. Stark reached the appraiser in the only language you can't file, force. Lewine iced the bell's tongue. Kane pulled gold out of the air like rain pulled out of pride. The appraiser screamed, not loud. Insulted. You can't put value back where it forgets to stay, it said, desperate now. I can remind it, I said. He smiled beside me without taking his eyes off the work. She can insist, he corrected. We insisted. Bell tower. Second exchange. Green threaded silver. The tower tried to tabulate. We blurred the lines. The appraiser FLI. PPED to a fresh page and made the air into little cages. Each cage asked a question about worth. If you answered wrong, it closed. If you answered right, it asked a worse question. Boring, I said, and shoved my afterglow through 3 seconds of its pattern. The cages stalled, gears embarrassed at being seen. Frieren's spell curved through their teeth and turned them into outlets. Kane grabbed, run off and hammered it to harmless puddles. Lewine froze the puddles just to be mean. Fern's voice stayed level, left Stark. He went left. The axe did the rest. I ate a palm to the sternum and died again short, efficient. When I came back, the appraiser's faceplate was a spiderweb. Give me the ledger, I said. No, it said primly. You'll smudge it. Frieren reached out and touched the air very lightly. Silver lines formed around the ledger space, not touching, inviting. The spell she wove was older than this town and ruder than this demon's manners. It did not break the rules. It made better ones. The ledger separated from the thing that loved it. Kane cheered. Lewine harumphed. Stark took the opening. Fern made sure no one did anything stupid with victory. The appraiser shrank, its plate finally cracking away to reveal a face underneath that was nothing at all. It looked at Frieren, and then at me, and understood something it hated. You return to yourself, it said. Yeah, I said, and to my people. I planted my fist in the empty face. It went out like a candle that deserved it. Square, the bell that didn't ring. Gold powdered the air and then stopped behaving like worship. Statues exhaled. A baker dropped to his knees, sobbing, hands to his own warm cheeks. The child on the barrel blinked as if finishing the punchline he'd been held on. The town made a sound you don't get often. Relief without debt. The woman from the headscarf ran to the square's edge and grabbed her husband's shoulders and shook him like he'd been away a week instead of an almost. He laughed into her scarf until it remembered how to smell like her. Kane hugged Lewine impulsively and got her face pressed into a cold shoulder with a sigh that meant fine. Stark carried 3 people at once in the way only he can. Which is to say like groceries that matter. Fern checked pulses with irritated tenderness. You owe me water, she told the baker, who cried harder and promised an ocean. Frieren stood with her hands tucked in her sleeves. The wind laid a thread of her hair across her cheek, and she didn't brush it away. I came to stand beside her, shoulder to shoulder, letting the not touch be the point. You let me decide, I said. I let you realize you already had, she replied. I huffed a laugh. You're hard to flirt with. You're easy to encourage, she said. And that was somehow worse for my composure. We stayed there until the square sounded like a market again. Altenstad Inn, late afternoon light. Bread happened the way bread does when fear releases a town's throat. Everything tasted like gratitude. Kane beamed at a bowl until it fell in love with her. Lewine flicked a crumb at me and pretended she didn't watch for whether I caught it. I did. Stark told a joke so bad even the dog sighed. Fern drank water with the concentration of a surgeon. The innkeeper poured me something sharp. Whatever you did, he said, it sounded like our parents telling us to stop being foolish. Good grandparents, I said. They were not, he said. But they were ours. He moved on. I leaned back against the wall, the day's weight settling in my bones like coins finally in the right pockets. Fern drifted over. You died twice, she said, calm but not casual. Once on purpose, I said. Once because the appraiser had hands. And you chose timing, she said. Thank you. I nodded. Thanks for not letting me skate. She sniffed. I am not the ice under you. I am the person hitting you with a staff when you think skating is the point. Romantic, I said. She didn't blush, but there was a blink that meant the compliment had made a home and was painting the walls. Don't tell Kane, she said. Wouldn't dare, I said, and did not. Look over at Kane licking honey off her thumb with happy disrespect for my self-control. Frieren joined us, silent as a vow. She regarded me with that unsmiling mercy she keeps around people who haven't earned the right to be tragedies yet. The curve answered you easily, she said. Ancient resonance likes your afterglow. Because it thinks I'm old. I asked. Because you listen, she said. Old magic doesn't care how long you've been alive. It cares whether you're rude. Am I rude? Persistently, she said, and I laughed before I could not. Across the room the saved people told stories with their hands, making the shapes of how close they'd been to losing what they loved, as if that gesture could keep the gap closed going forward. It never can, but it helps. Bell tower roof, blue hour. I climbed back up once the town relaxed enough to ignore me. The roof watched the valley through an even light. A fine tremor ran through the hill line, the way a big animal sleeping underground might snore. Return. A thought brushed my core, distant as horizon. Pass, I said. It didn't argue. The immortal eater didn't bargain. It learned. It had watched me thread green through Ilver and had added something to its quiet hunger, a respect for patience that felt like teeth tucked behind a smile. Footsteps on the stairs. Frieren joined me, not asking if I wanted company because she does not ask questions she knows the answers to. You thought about matched, I said. Yes, she said, and about people who copy from the wrong page. How do you stand it? I asked. All the repeating. I don't, she said. I pass through. I stop where it matters. She looked at me. And you? I run at it, I said. Until it's tired of me. You kiss like someone who refuses to mourn before it's necessary, she said. As if continuing the thought she'd left down in the tower. I swallowed, unprepared for the honesty. Is that a complaint? It's a map, she said. Draw carefully. We stood until the valley lost its edges. Rode out of Altenstadt, night. We left under lanterns and bread and a sense the town would tell this story badly in all the right ways. Lewine counted coins into her palm. Kane sang to the road and made it less smug. Stark carried the bell's silence first so it wouldn't try to come along. Fern kept an eye on my breathing without admitting to it. We camped near a hedgerow where fireflies wrote tiny curses at each other. Kane took the place near my shoulder like she'd been assigned there by a benevolent committee. You okay? She asked. Yeah, I said. Today made sense. Not really, she said cheerfully. But we insisted anyway. I bumped her knee with mine. Thanks for the anchor. Anytime, she said, and then softer. Don't spend yourself to make proof. You don't have to prove it to us. Lewine's voice drifted from her bedroll. He will anyway. He's a type. Accurate, Fern said, somewhere between exasperation and allegiance. Frieren settled across the fire. Eyes reflecting embers. Tomorrow, she said, the pass will try to kill us with snow. Lewine grinned into the dark. Finally, something honest. I lay back, hands behind my head, watching one star outstare the fire. Somewhere beyond the ridge, the patient hunger of a thing that eats immortals tuned itself to our breathing and waited for a key. It would keep waiting. I had more songs. End of Chapter 3. Chapter 4 Snowfield Pact. South face of the Hailspine Pass, late morning. Wind slapped every sentence out of our mouths and then apologized with snow in the eyes. Lewine grinned like she'd invented weather. Finally, she yelled over the blow. Honest danger. Kane tucked her scarf higher. You say that like mud wasn't honest. Mud was very honest. It told the truth about my boots. Your boots are a tragedy, Lewine said, kicking her own crampons into rhyme with show-off precision. Stark leaned forward into the gusts, one hand on his axe. The other steadying the courier we delivered yesterday and somehow acquired a newer, less cowardly version of. Fern checked the line of us with quick, clean glances, counting breaths like assets. Frieren walked the edge, robes barely moving, as if wind couldn't find the invoice to bill her. Me, I let the cold pinch my ears and the pace get under my skin. The immortal core inside me hummed warm and smug. The afterglow trailed close, a green ghost that didn't want to freeze. Eyes up, Fern called. Cornice ahead. A white overhang curled above the ridge like a lazy wave pretending not to be a guillotine. Lewine's gaze sharpened. Light feet, kids. Define, light, Stark muttered, somehow reducing his footprint to polite suggestions. We moved. The cornice groaned. Somewhere deeper. The pass thought about breathing wrong. Don't love that sound, I said. I do, Lewine said. It means the mountain is awake. Better than sleeping while you walk on its face. Kane bumped my shoulder, bright even behind frost. If she starts naming snow types again, tell her we'll stage an intervention. There are only 30, Lewine said, offended. And half of them are danger. Blue ice ledge, minutes later. The world fell away on our right 300 meters of storytelling nobody would enjoy. A spindrift snake unspooled across the ledge and tried to make us rethink careers. Carving, Lewine said, and began to skate-lace the path with thin, wickedly placed plates of firm ice. Her blades weren't metal. They were intent and practice, kicked into rock with the weight of a woman who'd argued a lot of winter into submission. Stark watched, impressed despite himself. You do that in your sleep. I dream in slope angles, she said. And theft. Kane sang under her breath, sketching water memory into the slick so it held the exact footfalls she wanted us to take. I followed the rhythm, palms grazing air like I could catch any mistake before it happened. Don't die, Fern said without looking back. Not planning to, I called, but something in the mountain listened to the promise and smirked. The ledge narrowed, wind sharpened, the cornice farther along big, Jeer than it had any right to be cracked like a bone. Back, Frieren shouted. It went. Avalanche sound is not a roar. It's a sliding decision the mountain makes and you get to argue with. The cornice B, broke clean and came first with the lazy confidence of inevitability. Move, Lewine said, voice suddenly flat, all flirt burned off by math. Run the line I cut. No stops. Stark scooped the courier like a sack of expensive flour. Kane grabbed Friern's sleeve to sync steps. Frieren turned and placed a single finger against the air, drawing a trembling silver stitch across the slope above us. I went last because that's how I'm wired, counting heartbeats, calculating how many I could spend. The avalanche already knew my name by the time I sprinted. Die, Theno. Not yet. Live, then move. I ran. The not quite visible path Lewine had carved, feet picking the memory Kane had laid down. Snow leapt the ridge behind us, white and soft and absolutely capable of burial. Left, Lewine snapped. We left. The slab snapped where we'd been. Frieren's curved thread caught a sheet and tugged it sideways like a seam ripper. The avalanche growled, insulted. A Serac blue ice tower, cracked like glass, tilted above me. I got it, I said. And I didn't. The Serac came anyway, a cathedral thinking about forgiveness. I threw myself under it, let the first kiss of crushing hit, and died. Green burst. The afterglow reached back across 2 seconds, grabbed the last good footfall I'd taken, and pushed it ahead, a duplicate step appearing where I'd need it. Momentum snapped into place like a seatbelt I'd forgotten to buckle. I returned alive in a dash and hit that ghost step hard enough to feel my skeleton grin. The Serac crashed behind, carving a bite out of the ledge we were no longer on. Show off, Lewine shouted, and I could hear the relief wrapped in the insult. Educational, I yelled back, lungs burning. We ran until the slope flattened its hand and the avalanche flopped into a sulk down the gully. Wind lifted the spindrift away to find someone else. Everyone breathed. Stark laughed once, huge and grateful. Kane whooped and kissed Friern's cheek on impulse. Frieren pretended not to like it and very much did. Lewine stalked up to me and fisted my jacket, breath visible between her teeth. Stupid, she said. Confident, I countered. You waited to die until it made you faster. She shook me once. Do it again and I'll throw you into a crevasse and jump after you so I can finish the argument before you return. Romantic, I said, and only then saw the way she was shaking. Not fear. Adrenaline with nowhere to go. Something in me stupid. Hunst reached up and touched her wrist, not to stop her, just to say I'm here and we made it. She kissed me like a sprint ending quick, hard, teeth almost clacking. Consent was the heat behind it and the pull back after. Snow hissed around our boots. The pass listened. Somewhere in the white, something else listened too. The world clicked. A sigil flared where our chests nearly touched white geometry like frost traced in green light, then sank out of sight behind my ribs. Avalanche step. Weight gathered under my heels. Not heavier. Truer. Each shift stacked momentum the way falling stacks certainty. Every uninterrupted beat promised the next would hit harder if I didn't flinch. Lewine's eyes widened, then narrowed with sharp satisfaction. Good. Now we can really run. Windcut ridge, noon. The ridge looked carved with a saw too big for people. Ice fangs hung from the leeward side like teeth that didn't believe in dentists. A rope bridge stretched over a gorge of cold shadow. A sign dangled from one post. RIMEBRIDGE in letters hacked by someone with chapped hands and a sense of humor. Charming, Stark said. Trap, Frieren said. Obviously, I said. But scenic. Frieren's eyes skimmed the gorge. Threads glimmered faint around her, testing tension points that weren't physical. Something set the timing here, she said. We'll be met before the midpoint. Then we won't be at the midpoint, Lewine said, wicked grin back in place. Kane clapped her gloves together. I can calm the river under the ice. If we fall, we don't die angry. Let's die happy, I said. Or not at all, Frieren added. Ambitious, I agreed. We went 2 by 2 Stark first with the courier again, because he refuses to pretend his strength isn't also patience. Frieren behind, reading the bridge like a ledger. Frieren in the middle, because that's where you put old magic when you want the enemy to miscalculate. Kane and Lewine arguing about toe placement. Which is code for I'm terrified and also I'm me. I took the rear. The avalanche step thrummed, hungry for rhythm. Halfway across, the fog below stirred. Figures rose, demons long starved, winter thin, wearing snow-like prayer shawls. Their eyes were wrong. Too bright, too polite. Welcome, the lead said. The toll is endings. Overpriced, I called. Lawine's lip curled. They talk like rules pamphlets. Quote, Kane blew them a kiss that froze midair and fell with a tink sound. Out of stock. The demons leapt. Rhymebridge. First exchange. 2 hit the ropes and froze them so they wouldn't sway. A third slid along the underside like a spider that hates you. 4 more rose in a choir line, hands weaving ice thread snares. Don't stop, Lawine said through her teeth. Momentum. She sprinted. I matched, the avalanche step stacking force with every plank that didn't break. The first demon's thread came for my ankles. I didn't cootie pressed, weight rolling through without pause. The thread snapped under the idea of my foot, not the soul. Oh, I like this, I said. Pay attention. Fern snapped, staff flicking a snare aside so cleanly it seemed embarrassed to have existed. Kane hummed a low note and the gorgeous buried river remembered spring. The air softened by a single insult. The demons blinked in whether they hadn't ordered. Frieren lifted an invisible needle. Silver curvature laced the bridge so the straight line we should have been trapped inside became a path that went around the snare and then back into it like a joke at the snare's expense. Stark met the spider demon with an axe that had been waiting politely to be rude. The blow carried good manners and bad mercy, precise and final. The lead demon smiled with too many teeth. You return to yours. A ripple went through the fog that wasn't wind, and for an instant my core itched with the memory of a mouth that had learned patience. Not now, I told the unseen listener. The demon bared its teeth wider. As if hearing a choir I didn't. Lawine, I called. Race. She didn't look back. You'll lose. I went anyway. Avalanche step took the bet and shoved momentum under my ribs. My strides got cleaner. Each landing set up the next with more weight feeding weight, rhythm paying rhythm. Behind me the afterglow struggled to keep up. For once, I was outrunning my own ghost. A demon lunged, jaws paper tearing wide. I didn't dodge. I brushed past without losing beat, let its teeth glance my shoulder, accepted the pain as interest, and hit the next plank harder, the store. Rhythm pulsing up my spine and into my fists. I punched the lead demon once. It felt like 4 punches. The first was mine. The next 3 were favors I'd stacked by not hesitating. It forgot what it had been about to say and fell aside, more surprised than dead. Lawine barked a laugh, short and bright. Finally, something you're good at. Your approval is my favorite drug, I said. Don't get addicted, she shot back. But the heat in her cheeks could have melted a small, tasteful icicle. Rhymebridge. Second exchange. The fog thickened. Voices under the bridge started whispering recipes again. Return. Return sharper. Return sweeter. You're not invited, I said under my breath, and ducked a hook of cold that wanted to be a collar. Fern's staff tapped my calf lightly, not enough to break rhythm. Just enough to adjust. Higher knees, she said. Don't waste the rebound. Copy. I panted, obeying. The step gained a note. Kane scattered rain memory like ball bearings for demon feet. Lawine hardened handrails into blades, forcing the spiders to pick between slicing themselves and slipping off the world. Stark took any choice they made personally and removed them from philosophy. Frieren's threads arched out and came back in with the elegance of old solutions, nothing fancy, nothing wasteful. She shaped the fight into a polite room the demons didn't know how to misbehave inside. We hit the far post together. The last 2 demons realized they'd been relegated to set dressing and tried to become plot. Lawine threw a knee into one like gravity owed her interest. I stepped through the other. 4 punch burst, flattening it into ice dust and bad habits. Silence returned, offended. The bridge swayed once, then decided to act professional again. We crossed. Snowline Lodge, late afternoon. The lodge crouched under a leeward cliff, timbers black with patience. Smoke braided out of a stone chimney. A faded sign above the door read broom and blade, as if someone had opened a tavern specifically for arguments between mages and mercs. Inside, heat, stew, and the smell of boots, remembering they used to be cows. We took a corner table. Stark thawed like a saint. Kane steamed like a cheerful kettle. Fern unwound her scarf with bureaucratic efficiency. Frieren drank something hot with the concentration of a scientist applying tea to a hypothesis. Lawine whip, ed a smear of blood from my shoulder with the pad of her thumb. You're patchy, she said. I died a little, I said. You always die a little, she said, more tired than irritated. Try living a little without it. I am, I said. And meant it. She looked at me like she wanted to believe that and also wanted to kick me down the stairs for practice. Tell me you didn't enjoy outrunning your own afterglow. Enjoyed it more because you set the line, I said, and watched the compliment land exactly where I wanted it to. Flatterer, she said, but softer. Kane slid into the seat on my other side, bumping hips like punctuation. We almost died cute, she said. 10 out of 10. Fern snorted despite herself. Stark raised his mug. To not dying cute. Boring toast, Lawine said, clinking anyway. Frieren set her cup down. Something is waiting above the pass, she said. It has questions about eternity and manners that will not improve if we answer. The eater, Fern asked. No, Frieren said. An emissary. Perhaps a clerk with sharper teeth. More appraisers. I groaned. Accountants, Lawine said with deep, ancient loathing. Worse, Kane whispered. Consultants. We laughed. Because you make jokes when you smell edge just to tell yourself you still own your throat. Back porch, after dinner, Pav, Lawine. He stands like a problem you can solve if you give it enough velocity. Lawine leaned on the rail, cold biting fingers and lips she pretended couldn't get chapped. Deku took the other post, hands in pockets, posture loose with purpose. You run well, she said. You cut a path, he said. Makes running easy. You say that, and yet I watched you run off the path because you like scaring gravity. He smiled like a cheap sin and she had to turn away to stop rewarding it. I like momentum. It's honest. She stared at the black snow and let the quiet get close enough to be tolerated. You know what I hate. Several things, he said. Lists are your kink. I hate when strength is comfortable, she said. When it lays down and asks to be pet. I want to fight something that fights back and doesn't apologize. He didn't answer right away, Hitch she appreciated without admitting it. And what do you do when that something isn't a demon? He asked. She almost laughed. Throw a snowball at it. See if it throws one back. She side-eyed him. He was watching her like he'd memorized her windbreak pattern. Not hungry, or not only. Curious like a wolf who'd decided to be polite to one person this week. What about you? She asked, because she was owed an answer. What's your honest fear? He rolled a shoulder under his jacket, thinking. That I'll turn people into proof. Die for them because it's what I know how to do. Spend myself end dramatic change and forget to be alive between. She didn't soften. She respected the problem and pointed at it. You will, sometimes. So have a rule. What rule? He asked. Outrun the habit, she said. Use me. Use this. She tapped his sternum with 2 fingers. It felt like electricity met her skin, but don't stop. If you keep moving, you don't become a statue with a story carved on the base. He huffed. You telling me to keep running in a way that doesn't make me a coward. I'm telling you to keep running in a way that makes you late to your funeral, she corrected. He laughed, head back. It was a good sound. Snow approved, falling quieter for a second. They stood there until cold did what it always does and demanded rent. Come inside, she said. Your core hum is making the porch jealous. He followed. He is very educable when you aim him correctly. Upper pass. Next morning, whiteout. The mountain had decided to practice murder. Visibility dropped to childhood. Sound turned dishonest. Frost crept across lashes and gear. Rope, Fern said. We tied in Stark anchor. Fern second, Frieren third, Kane, me, Deku last because he wanted to watch our backs and that's how he loves. The white moved, not wind propose. A figure stepped out of the snow like a chalk line deciding to develop a personality. Tall, slim, wearing a flawless white coat that never got dirty even now. Where a face should have been. A polite blank with subtle ridges. It lifted a hand and the wind flattened to listen. Good morning, it said, voice like a receptionist at an execution. Are you the return? You're going to have to narrow that, I said. It ignored me. We'd like to test the hypothesis of your resilience. Consent, I said. You don't have it. Isn't your power an argument against consent? It asked. As if amused. Isn't yours an argument for being shoved off a cliff? Lewine asked. The thing inclined its head in a motion so appropriate it made my skin itch. We're not unreasonable. Survive 3 procedures, and we'll permit passage. Procedures, Stark echoed in the exact tone you save for someone explaining why your axe needs a permit. Frieren's voice went low without getting loud. Declined. Quote, the emissary sighed like a patient teacher. People always say no. Then they say yes when the mountain says yes. First procedure. Isolation. The whiteout tightened. Rope lines vanished into milky noise. I couldn't feel weight in my hands. For a heartbeat, for 3, I believed I was alone on a slope with 1,000 ways down and none of them as shaped. No, I said, out loud. Because sometimes you have to tell the trick it won't work. We're tied. The avalanche step thrummed, reminding my body that weight stacks, and so does memory. I pivoted, NNING not forward but through the idea of separation, placing steps where Lewine would have put them, not where I could see them. My hand hit rope. I slid to Fern's knot, caught it, hauled us together like a fisherman furious at the ocean. Fern's breath hitched, then steadied. Second procedure. Patience, the thing said. You'll admire it. The snow stilled. The wind stopped. The cold got thoughtful. Time stretched the way skin does before a cut. Kane's voice threaded the silence. No, she said, bright and brave. Today is fast. She kissed my cheek quick, warm, and the air drank the moment like liquor. Tidalok answered. The world lurched back a second, just enough for Fern to rip a cast into the gap. The spell punched a hole in the not quite time that the emissary had lacquered over us. Third procedure, it said, almost excited now. Accounting. I hate you, Lewine told it, meaning the species. Line items, the emissary clarified. We will tally what you are permitted to keep. Try me, I said. Stepping forward, momentum stacking, rhythm in my bones. It reached not with hands but with column sand I hit the math. Avalanche step made the strike compound. First impact. Mine. Second. The run I hadn't broken. Third. The refusal I'd kept since the cornice. The numbers fell out of the air like teeth. The emissary took a full step back, finally messy. Interesting, it said. Again. Frieren's thread curled. No, she said, and the word had policy in it. You don't get to set the rules. Kane split the snow's skin into 4 streams. Lewine froze the F.R. into rails that curved where Frieren pointed. Stark planted his axe where a throat would be if bureaucracy had a body. Fern tapped a rhythm that meant now, then, now. I ran the rails like a sled, hit the emissary once. And watched 3 after impacts make it reconsider its vocation. The whiteout peeled away. The mountain remembered it was a place, not a form. We'll allow passage, the emissary said. Voice crisp with a crack through it. For now. Generous, Fern said, deadpan. Pragmatic, it replied, and vanished into pure unhelpfulness. I breathed in air that wasn't philosophy and tasted, faintly, the eater's patient approval like a chef noting a new technique. Stop watching, I told the sky. It didn't. They never do. North descent, midday blue. Weather turned gemstone clear after the tantrum. The way it often does when a mountain is finished scolding. The world glittered, peaks stacked into a horizon that looked smug even under snow. We took the descent fast. Avalanche step made the slope a partner. Lewine's line cut through crests with flirt and cruelty. Kane rode each roll like she dated it for a month and parted on excellent terms. Stark shepherded us rough the trick bits with the grace of a boulder that understands ballet. Fern set the cadence that kept us from getting cocky. Frieren moved like a thesis. At the last shelf before treeline, the wind shifted and brought a smell like old paper and ambitious ink. Male, Lewine said, wrinkling her nose. A figure waited on the trail below, small, hooded, carrying a staff taller than she was. She didn't flinch as we skied to a stop in a flurry of cold glitter. Fern, she said, voice careful. Frieren. Fern blinked. Hello. The girl pulled back her hood. Young face. Serious mouth. Eyes like doors to stacks of books. A mark of the kirch at her collarbone. Message from Siri, she said, with the composure of someone who had practiced those words until they fit. She held out a sealed strip of vellum. Frieren took it, expression so unchanged you'd pay for the ability to read its subtext. I leaned to Lewine. Who's Siri again? I whispered. I knew. I wanted her version. Librarian with God issues, Lewine said. Or God with librarian issues. Depends on the day. Frieren cracked the seal. The paper said much with little. Invitation, she said. Fern exhaled like a number had just risen on a board she hated. Of course. For what? Kane asked, bouncing on her toes for heat. A test, Frieren said. Of methods and minds. The messenger girl shifted, suddenly just to pay. RSON with cold feet and a long walk back. There's a warm place a mile down, she said. I'm supposed to say you're expected within 3 days, or not at all. Cheerful, Stark said. Siri is never cheerful, Frieren said. Efficient. The girl nodded, relieved to have delivered exactly the amount of doom she'd been given. She scurried downslope, the world closing behind her steps like a book you'd open later. Lewine elbowed me gently. You've got your playboy smile on. I'm thinking, I said. About kissing a librarian god. Kane teased. I'm thinking about tests, I said. And abo. Oot not dying as punctuation in someone else's thesis. Fern looked at me over her scarf. Good, she said simply. Treeline, early afternoon, Pav, Deku. We found a sunlit hollow out of the worst wind and took 5. Pine resin sweetened the air. Snow fell like it had cooled off about trying to kill us. I flopped into a drift. Lewine flopped next to me and pretended she hadn't synced the flop. Kane sat on my other side, stole my glove, and warmed my fingers between both hands without ceremony. Stark invented a seat out of nothing and the refusal to be uncomfortable. Fern stood, because she rests by standing correctly. Frieren read Siri's words again, eyes moving once, like that was enough. You okay? Kane asked me. I like you both as heaters, I said. Use us, Lewine said. Coin operated. Kane gasped. Excuse you. I am subscription only. You're barely paywalled, Lewine said. Rude, Kane sniffed, and kissed my knuckles to prove a point, making my afterglow purr lick. A cat that had decided not to destroy the couch today. Frieren folded the vellum. We go, she said. Obviously, Lewine said at the same time as Fern said, we should. Stark rolled his shoulders. Tests make us better, or cockier. Fern muttered. Why not both? I said. She arched a brow. Because you have me. True, I said. I'm audited. Kane tucked my hand back into my glove. Question, she said, bright. With the new avalanche step, how many steps do you think you can stack before it starts to get stupid? Define stupid, Lewine said. Where friction stops believing in you, Kane said. I thought about it, feeling the hum in bones and boots. 10 before the world starts arguing, I said. 12 if Fern cues my knees. 15 if Frieren curves the path. 20 if I forget I'm mortal. Don't do the last one, Fern said. Noted, I said, and meant it like a promise. Lewine eyed me. We'll test it in a safer gully later. Define safer, I said, and she grinned. Ned the way weathered is right before it becomes a story. Long gully, late afternoon, training run. We found a slope that wanted to be you said long, clean fall line, forgiving apron. Lewine carved a spine down the center. Crisp edges that said here. Kane slicked a ribbon of softened ice through the spine so my foot would tell me yes or no without debate. Fern planted herself at midpoint with the authority of a whistle no one else could hear. Frieren set 2 curvature stitches at Third's gentle rails to keep stupid from becoming obituary. Go, Lewine said. I went. Step 1. Commit. 2. Breathe. 3. Don't look down like a coward, look down like an accountant. 4. The world got quieter. 5. My stride smoothed. 6. The avalanche step began compounding. Each landing paid interest to the next. 7. Air edged my ears like rumors. 8. My afterglow was laughing to keep up. 9. I had to chooseberry the 10th in comfort, or spend it. 10. Spend it. I kicked off the spine and punched the air in front of me. Impact thrummed up through feet and ghosts, the hit arriving as a stack of me now, just now, almost now. It blew a fan of powder out and left balance richer. 11, 12, 13. Fern's voice cut across the slope, clear and not loud. Knees. I corrected. 14 felt like flying with paperwork. 15 Frieren's stitch caught the path and bent it back so I didn't meet a tree doing taxes. 16 tasted like arrogance and joy. 17 asked me to forget skin. I stopped at 16. Lawine lifted her hand in a small salute. Good boy, she said, mock. Sugar over approval she couldn't quite hide. Gross, Kane said, but also he was very good. Fern checked my pupils like I'd come out of anesthesia. You stopped because I like skin, I said. And because you were going to hit me with your staff. Both correct, she said. Frieren's mouth tilted. You're learning to spend slowly, she said. Team economy, I said, grinning. Annoying slogan, Lawine muttered. Effective team. Dusk traverse, lavender light. We moved toward series archive, the snowfield easier now that it had failed to erase us. The sky did that big, generous violet you never get in cities. Shadows got long and friendly. A whisper brushed my core like a cold finger. Return, return, return. I hear you, I said, calm. Book a table if you're hungry. We're busy. The eater didn't answer. It had patience. It had my rhythm now, enough to hum along in the background while it sharpened knives. I wasn't going to spend today on it. Tomorrow, I promised the air. Not a surrender but a schedule. Fern walked close because she knows how to stand between a man and his worst timing. Kane sang a line about soups. Lawine called me slow and then let me catch up. Stark told the slope it was doing great. Frieren watched me not die and counted that as a passing grade for this chapter. Waymarker hut, night. The hut was barely walls and gratitude, but it held heat well. We crowded in. Stark hung pots. Kane made broth out of snow and confidence. Lawine stole my bowl and gave it back hotter. Fern wrote 3 lines in a notebook she refuses to show anyone. Frieren stared at the invitation again, all her years very still. I set my back to the timber and let tired settle, the good kind. Lawine slid down beside me until our arms touched. She didn't make it a thing. That was the thing. You ever going to miss me? She asked casually, if I die before you're bored. Yes, I said, immediately, loudly, and I'll keep running in the lines you left until the habit knows your name. She nodded like she could work with that, eyes on the door, where night dripped. Kane curled on my other side, head on my shoulder, breath sweet with stew. I will not die before I am bored, she announced. I will schedule death in a week where I am very free. Fern from the fire. No one is dying this week. Orders noted, I said. Frieren folded the vellum for the last time tonight. Tomorrow we go meet Siri, she said. Try not to die for style points. Function points only, I said. Function is sexy, Lawine said, deadpan. Kane giggled. Stark pretended to cough. Fern aimed a look at us that could season soup. Snow whispered around the hut like 1,000 small decisions not to be made tonight. I closed my eyes and dreamed of rails cut across blank slope. Of curves that answered, of steps that stacked into more than speed into a way to live where I didn't have to use death as punctuation to prove the sentence mattered. Somewhere out there, the thing that eats immortals practiced my beat. Let it. We had our own music. End of Chapter 4. Chapter 5 The Archive That Judges. Steps to the quiet city, morning like paper. The road ended at a wall of shelves. No bricks, no mortar. An archive had grown itself into a city. Avenues of book spines, domes of bound leather, bridges woven from catalog cards that never got wet. GHT came through a ceiling that wasn't there and didn't admit questions. Every breath smelled like dust that had chosen to be loyal. Kane tipped her head back until wonder made her wobble. If I sneeze, will I be fined? Almost certainly, Lawine said, already hating it on principle. This place looks like a rule learned how to walk. Fern's eyes sharpened with that particular respect she gives structures that can punish sloppiness. Stark adjusted the strap on his axe, moving carefully, as if the books might unionize against loud metals. Frieren walked ahead, hands tucked in sleeves, the measure of a long relationship in every quiet step. I kept my pace even. My core hummed with the same unease I felt before a big exam I hadn't studied for because I'd been too busy surviving lives. At the gate 2 monolithic slabs of translucent page stood a single attendant, all angles and linen, face beautiful in the neutral way of statutes and laws. Welcome to the archive, she said, voice pitched to carry without trying. Your appointment is accepted. Accepted by whom? Lewine said, and can we unaccept it? The attendant smiled a professional centimeter. You may always refuse testing. The consequence is remaining who you are. Kane whispered, I feel seduced and insulted. Good copy, I said. The pages parted. No creak. Of course. The intake desk, light-like rules. Inside. Soundproof quiet. The kind you pay for inexpensive buildings and get for free 2 miles into snow. A desk weighted with pens that had opinions about waistcoats. The attendant same one or a twin. Hard to say. Slid 6 slips toward us. Declare what you won't risk, she said. I looked at the neat boxes on the page. Wealth, memory, body, voice, trust, heart. Fern's pen moved first, right hand steady. She checked voice and trust. Under, notes, she wrote. No bargains on my behalf without my consent. Stark checked body and trust, added. I will take the first hit myself, not for pride, for confidence. Kane checked heart and drew a tiny wave. No jokes that make real promises brittle. Lewine checked memory and heart. I keep my own teeth. I keep my own grief. Frieren took the pen, paused as if negotiating with 2 centuries in a glance, and checked trust. Mine is not common currency. My turn. The boxes were bait. I could feel the archive wanting me to pick body like a dare. Or memory, because I carry mine loose. I checked body and, after a long beat, habit then scribbled it out because there wasn't a box for it, and wrote under, notes, I will not spend death to skip thinking. I'll not prove love by dying for it when living is harder. Fern's eyes flicked to my slip. Her throat moved. She didn't say anything, but the air between us got more oxygen. The attendant read our choices without reading them. Proceed, she said, and the floor turned into a staircase that wasn't built for feet. Floating stairwell, ascending argument. Steps hung in air, made of words too small to read. The space between them hummed with unsaid things. We climbed because that's what stairs dare you to do. At the first landing, a door cut from thin glass opened on nothing. The sign above it read, exaggeration. We kept walking. At the second, mercy. At the third, speed. At the fourth, evidence. Bias audit, Fern murmured. It's sorting us. Or we're choosing, Frieren said. Both, I said, because that's life. At the 5th landing, the step in front of me slid away. My foot found air. Reflex said die, then move. Choice said no. I took the missed step as a promise, not a veer. Dicked threw my weight forward and down into the next solid line without breaking rhythm. Avalanche step hummed approval. Spend the motion, not the blood. Fern's hand brushed my back at the spine, almost nothing, exactly enough. Good, she said, and I felt something in the archive make a small, important note. We reached a vestibule of light shivering like sugar on fruit. The test begins, a voice said from everywhere. Thin, amused, older than courtesy, Siri stepped out of the light like an observation-taking human form. Not tall, not small, white hair pinned tidy, eyes like windows in winter. She wore simple layers that managed to be both teacher and thunderhead. Frieren, she said. Siri, Frieren said, not bowing and not needing to. Siri's gaze moved to me. She watched the way you read the margin notes first. You are the return. I am a return, I said. The mountain filed paperwork about it. At last, she said, like she'd been bored for a decade and had been promised entertainment. Don't die in here. It's inconvenient to clean. Understood, I said. I'll try something new. Do, she said, and clapped her hands once. Leave something behind. The vestibule offered 6 hooks, plain wood. On impulse, I took off my jacket and hung it up. No, Siri said, as if gently correcting my handwriting. Not a coat, a convenience. Kane hung the habit of making a joke first. Lewine hung the habit of turning disgust into armor. Stark hung the habit of apologizing for his kindness. Frieren hung nothing at all, which was still an answer. Fern closed her eyes, steadied her breath, and hung the habit of saying, fine, when it wasn't. I swallowed. I hung dying as a shortcut. The vestibule approved without clapping. The hourglass chamber, test 1, timing. 2 doors. One had now carved above it. The other said later. Siri nodded at me. Pick. Neither, I said, and looked at Fern. We picked together. Fern held my gaze. On your inhale, she said. I inhaled. We stepped through later on the same breath. Inside. A circular room, floor of dark slate, walls of shelves that leaned in. At the center, an hourglass taller than Stark, sand falling slow as patience. Around us, 4 shadows took shapes, but wrong. Deku made of green light with a grin that didn't reach eyes. Fern with a staff that ended conversations by habit. Lewine carved of frost and contempt. Kane built out of glass water, smiling too wide. No Frieren. That somehow made the room ruder. The hourglass's upper bulb had 4 small stones in it, each etched with a sigil. Ours. Maybe. Future us. Worse. A voice the room said, win without stopping the sand. Take your sigils before your reflections do. Rules. Lewine breathed, delighted by how much she hated them. Non-lethal, Fern said quickly. Agreed, I said. Surgical. Our shadows moved. My not me blurred, overusing afterglow like a child with a new hammer. Every hit came early or late. Sloppy power. I wanted to punch him and hug him. Let him burn himself, Fern said, reading my impulse like a label. Control your tempo. I nodded, muscles wanting to sprint. On your mark. 3 beats now. We stepped like we'd rehearsed. And we hadn't. Discipline isn't just a word. It's a metronome that lets 2 people own the same second. Fern flicked her staff. It didn't hit my shadow. It hit the floor half a breath before his foot landed. The timing shock made his stride hitch. I slid in, not fast, correct, and tapped his wrist. Afterglow sprayed harmless against the slate, confused at being expected to wait. Across the circle, Lewine baited her own reflection into vanity and stole its edge with one rude, perfect kick. Kane tripped hers with a ripple of Titlelock ruining a puddle's memory. So fake Kane stepped where real Kane had just turned water into a slick. The hourglass counted. Sand kept falling. Siri watched, chin in fist like a child at a puppet show whose strings she could cut. Again, Fern said, and I let her cadence tune me tighter. We didn't need big moves. We needed exact. My shadow tried to die to get behind me. I didn't give him the excuse. I cut his line. Shoulder in, knee soft, hands open. We're done using bodies as punctuation, I told my worst habit, and let him hit the floor with dignity intact and purpose denied. The sigil stones rattled. One dropped a D from the hourglass and landed harmlessly near Fern's boot. Kane snatched hers out of air with a laugh. Lewine plucked hers like stealing apples. Mine stayed up, as if waiting for something else to resolve. Cute, Siri murmured. He wants the real prize. What's the real prize? I asked, not taking my eyes off the mimic that kept trying to die better than me. Timing that stays yours when the world wants to own it, she said. Fern stepped into my peripheral vision, close but not crowding. Breathe with me, she said. I did. Inhale, her shoulders lifted a hair. Exhale, her staff dipped. Our rhythms locked, not romantic, not sexual, something quieter and more dangerous. Consent to sink. Heat spiraled low in my chest and met discipline coming the other way. The air clicked. A sigil FLARED then buried itself under my sternum-clean lines, steady pulse. Discipline link. The room heard it. I heard it. Fern's gaze snapped to mine on reflex, surprised and not sorry. Again, she said, voice steadier than my hands. And we moved like a single idea argued by 2 mouths. Double cast. Her simple strike repeated itself in the same second, not a second spell, the same one harmonized with the afterglow's echo when I didn't die to make it. My mimic couldn't parse the math. He reached for the old cheat. We denied it together. My stone fell. I caught it without flair. Sand ran out. The hourglass chimed like a coin dropped in a jar to fund a future we'd actually spend on. Kiss. Kane stage whispered to no one in particular, thrilled. Fern didn't blush. She did take a half-step closer and place her forehead against mine for exactly 1 breath. No more, not less. The air tasted like snow that would not dare to be muddy later. Good, she murmured, and stepped back, the link humming quiet between us. Siri's mouth twitched, annoyed at being entertained properly. Proceed. The stacks that move, test 2, restraint. A corridor of shelves unrolled ahead, books sliding in and out like a complicated greeting. Title letters crawled along spines. Kill, stay, break, leave, love. The rules hissed from the baseboards. No destructive casting. No lethal force. No rewriting of titles. Somewhere a bell laughed at us. This is rude, Lewine said approvingly. Non-lethal, Fern repeated. Copy, I said, and meant it. The core wanted to show off. The habit wanted to volunteer. I put both in a chair and told them to sit. Shadows poured out of the aisle mouths bookbind demons with thread for tendons and boards for ribs. They didn't bleed. They tore. They wanted to make us tear too. Borrow. Frieren said simply, and traced a silver arc that didn't cut anything. Reshelved a monster mid-lunge. It tried to be angry on a different shelf and discovered that organization is a weapon. Kane made water bookmarks that pinned joints without breaking them. Lewine froze bindings shut. Stark used his axe like a librarian stamps. Decisive, final, non-fatal. I stepped into the thick of it and refused to be interesting. Afterglow stayed sheathed. Avalanche step turned each small motion into correction, not collision. The link with Fern kept my hands from running ahead of the beat. One demon tried to crawl into my storyboard fingers, flipping pages looking for chewed-up tropes. I caught its wrist, breath synced with Fern's, and spoke clear, "You're a footnote. Stay in your lane." The board bent, not broke. Bent and held. The rules hissed something like approval and left us alone long enough to breathe. "Why'd I like this?" Lewine asked, disgusted with herself. Because restraint is a kind of violence that doesn't lie, Fern said. I hate that, I agree, Lewine muttered, and froze another spine shut with obvious satisfaction. We came out with sweat, a few paper cuts, and pride that didn't taste stupid. Siri stood at the next threshold with a ledger I am 100% sure did not exist until we passed this test. She made a small tick in a column labeled expensive, but worth it. Final, she said. Floor below. The pit of unlearning. Test 3, identity. A circular arena dropped away from our feet like an insult. At the bottom, a shallow pool of clear water. No spectacle, no dais, just reflection. The trial is simple, Siri said. Walk to the center. You'll be offered a faster path to yourself. Deny it. Define faster, I said. Die, she said, bored of me and not. Start the beat wherever you want. Skip patience. Skip pacing. Skip the part where your friends correct you. Kane squeezed my hand once and let go. Lewine roll. Ed her shoulders like about to fight a blizzard she liked. Stark breathed purely. Frieren said nothing and somehow said everything. Fern stood to my right, staff slanted, link pulsing like a second, helpful heartbeat. I descended. The water held the exact temperature of a bad idea. My reflection stood up without me. He smiled with my mouth and opened my hands like offering a hug or a trap. Shortcut, he said. One big death. Right now. Get the power. Save 3 hours. Be impressive. I'm busy, I said. He shrugged. You want to save people. This saves them. And you get to be the hero without waiting for everyone else to be ready. He was good. He sounded like me on a day when grief was talking softly and I wanted to call it truth. Fern, I said, never taking my eyes off my worst convenience. Give me a rule. She didn't hesitate. No dying in rooms where patience is possible. Specific, I said, and smiled. My reflection hissed. They slow you down. Sometimes, I said, and sometimes they stop me from becoming a statue with, he meant well, chiseled on it. I stepped forward. He did too. We met where the reflection line blurs. He grabbed my shirt. I grabbed his wrists. Breath synced. Link thrummed. I didn't try to kill him. I outlasted him. The water started to remember rain. Kane's earlier kiss made the Titlelock sit up and pay attention to this basin like a bored cat. The reflection tried to die to skip the argument. I denied him the stage. Live, I said, voice low. Then move. He shrank. Not to nothing. Habits don't die when you humiliate them. They wait their turn. But he deferred. The pool calmed. A clear path opened to a still center. I reached it and didn't step in. No cheap wins, I said to the empty air, to myself, to Siri, to the mountain. To the eater listening from wherever patience lives. Not today. Water stilled. The trial let go. Up in the circle, Siri's mouth tightened in an expression midway between approval and annoyance. It suits her. Exit, she said. The archive's heart, not a courtroom. We gathered in a rotunda so quiet sound didn't know where to start. Siri stood where verdicts go. Assessments, she said, brisk. To Stark. You move like a decision with good posture. Keep it. To Lewine. You lie about your tenderness. Stop it, or lie better. To Kane. Your joy is a weapon. Aim. Don't spray. K. Anne saluted and absolutely would not be able to help herself later. Siri almost smiled. To Frieren. You've learned to teach without dragging. It took long enough. Boredom is an excellent tutor, Frieren said. To Fern. Siri paused. As if moving a star with a finger. Your standards are a mercy that looks like cruelty. Don't dull them to make him like you. He already likes me, Fern said, simple and devastatingly true. Kane squeaked. Lewine smirked sideways. I coughed on absolutely nothing. And you, Siri said to me. You spend power like a government with a surplus, too happy to show it works. Not worried enough about famine. I'm learning, I said. I notice, she said. You refused the cheap death 3 times. Your link turned timing from showmanship into method. I dislike being impressed. Take the compliment as a fine. Paid, I said. Siri's gaze thinned further. The thing that eats immortals is tracing you like a signature. It will stop testing edge cases soon. Advice, I asked. Be expensive, she said. Not flashy. Costly. It's the same thing, Lewine muttered. It is not, Siri and Fern said together, which made the entire archive pat its own spine, pleased. Siri lifted a hand. Threads rose from the rotunda floor, silver, green, white, blue, one for each of us. They braided for a second into a cord, then drifted apart again, still touching. Quote, consider this a library card you may never show anyone, she said. You may ask the archive one question in a place where questions behave. What's the cost? I asked. Using it unwisely, she said. The debt is embarrassment. I bowed not to grovel, to mark the moment as mine and straightened. We turned to go. Siri called after me. Deku, she said, if you ever must die for effect, do it late. Annoy your enemy with the long version. That's the plan, I said. She waved us away like smoke. Vestibule, hooks again. We took back what we'd left. Kane pocketed her jokes like candy. Lewine holstered disgust, thinner now. Sharper, more honest. Stark reclaimed the apology but refused to use it as a shield. Fern picked up the habit she'd hung and then set it down again, eyes thoughtful. Frieren touched the empty hook and stepped past. I put the shortcut back on its nail and walked out without it. The gate sighed as we left, as if relieved to have survived us. Field beneath the archive, evening gold. We made camp in a hedge bowl where grass remembered summer. Birds complained about nothing important. The archive breathed above USHUGE, quiet, uninterested in small fires. Stark cooked like a man bribing fate. Kane invented a card game and cheated at it with such transparent delight that Lewine let herself be cheated. Frieren pretended not to watch Siri's city think. Fern cleaned her staff, which means she cleaned her head. I sat with my back to a stone, the link with Fern a warm coil under everything else. She came to sit beside me like it had been scheduled. Rule check, she said. Hit me. No dying where patience is possible, she said. Addendum. If you must die, warn me. I'll make it boring, I promised. Make it planned, she corrected. I nodded. Thank you. For what? For not asking me to stop being me. Just to stop cheating. She considered that. That's almost a compliment. It is a compliment, I said. I'll put it in writing. I already have it, she said. And bumped her shoulder into mine, small and firm. Kane slid over, radiant. So the link is a thing, she sang, thrilled. I could feel it. It's like music but with rules. Everything is music with rules, Lewine said. Except Deku before today. Rude, I said. Correct, Fern said. Frieren's voice drifted across the fire. The eater will try to corner you where those rules feel weakest. I know, I said. From above, where deals are bound and unbound, a cool interest touched my core, that patient, cookbook curiosity. Return. But make it easy. It was almost polite now. Make your own schedule, I told it softly. Mine's full. The night thickened. The fire listened. Our breaths lined up without anyone giving the order. Not synchronized. Harmonized. I slept and did not dream of dying. I dreamed of precision. Of green laid across silver, of water that remembers, of snow that stacks, of a staff tapping now, then, now. Of being a problem patience couldn't domesticate. Rode out. Pale dawn. We left the archive city with nothing signed and everything changed. The path angled toward valleys where people make soup when winter lets them. Half a mile out, a blue spark threaded the air like a stitch pulled through cloth from the wrong side. I felt it in the teeth of my afterglow. Portal, Kane asked, brightening. Not yet, I said. A rumor of one. Friend or foe? Stark asked. Both. Eventually, Frieren said. The spark died. The day didn't. Fern walked close, the link quiet as a shared watchword. Lewine pretended not to check my stride. Kane hummed a song that makes bad habits dance. Stark carried the weather like luggage that didn't mind. Frieren kept us pointed at a future we didn't owe yet. Somewhere behind us, Sari. Shelved our chapter where she could find it again. Somewhere ahead, the eater set the table and waited longer, learning the long way because we'd taken away the short one. Good. We were going to make patience spend itself. End of Chapter 5. Chapter 6 Threnody for the Undying. Graveyard of Waystones, stormlight morning. The stones rose from the heath like ribs. Old travel markers carved, cracked, each holding a ghost of a path. The wind pushed prayer grass flat and then let it up like breath. Things hummed under the dirt that weren't worms. Feels like a song stuck on the last note, Kane said, hand on a stone. Eyes narrowed. Bad chorus. Don't hum it, Lewine told her. We might sing back. Fern tested the ground with her staff. It made a polite, hollow sound. We do this on rules, she said, clipped and clear. No accidents. No cheap deaths. I nodded once. The core inside me purred, eager. The habit inside me sulked. Frieren walked the line of stones with fingers behind her back, as if asking the century a discreet question. It's been here before, she said. Left impressions like fingerprints on wax. The eater, Stark asked. Yes, she said, patient enough not to step twice in the same dust. But it looks. The wind cooled another degree. My ribs answered like a tuning fork. Return. Something breathed, not air. Return softer. Return sweet. No freebies, I said to the nowhere. If it's listening, Lewine said, chin up, let's make it spend attention. Kane grinned. All invoice. We took positions without ceremony. Stark at the outer arc, anchor weight and calm. Fern at my right, link quiet under the skin. Kane spread cups and sigils at cardinal points, coaxing water out of rock like secrets out of stubborn friends. Lewine cut the ground into rails only she could see. Momentum hiding in angles. Frieren traced 3 curves in air that would not touch until they had to. On my inhale, Fern said. Copy, I said. She breathed in. The world answered. First toll. No monster. No drummer. The eater arrived like a polite subtraction. Colors thinned. Seconds folded their arms and refused to be counted. The grass bent, stopped halfway up, and apologized. A line of frost walked down the waystones and sat at my feet. Recipe, it implied, curious and clean. Show me how you return. You can watch, I said. You don't get a bite. It extended a pressure, neither hand nor mouth, testing the core the way a chef taps a melon. Knuckle, tilt, listen. Don't flinch, Fern said, head barely turning. I didn't. I stepped into the PR. Escher and let it find me where I wanted it to. Sternum, breath, the place where the afterglow waits. Lewine, I called. Rails set, she said, voice flat with pleasure. Run, don't think. Frieren. Her silver threads hung like patient answers. Curve on the third. Kane. Water remembers, she sang softly. I'll rewind the moment you're dumb. Rude, I said, smiling, and took the hit. It killed me without moving. Die, then move. Green bled out of me in a sheet, anxious to be useful. I grabbed it with both hands and shaped it the way we'd planned. First death paid out as a shock, slapping the waystones awake. Old paths lit like veins. The eater's pressure hit the light and recoiled, surprised to find an address. I came back on my feet, lungs burning. Fern tapped my shoulder 1, 2 cadence back in place. Again, she said. Loop 2, I said. It obliged and I let it. Death, fast afterglow shoved into slip, a green smear along Lewine's invisible rail. I reappeared Thray. E steps ahead with momentum already compounding. The ground learned my rhythm, each landing kissed the next. Third, Frieren said, not loud. I died smiling. The afterglow streamed toward Frieren's hanging curves and threaded them. Silver turning green turning silver, ancient resonance humming tight in bone. The curve bent time's seam around the eater's pressure and tied it in a knot so neat it should have charged a fee. The waystones rang like glasses tapped at a quiet party. Interesting, the eater implied. Again, not for free, I said, dizzy with use. Cost is a thing, and cost is good. My hands had a tremble I didn't like. The core hummed higher, hotter. I looked at Fern. She heard my look. Stop trying to impress it, she said. Copy, I said, and meant it. Echo field, noonish gray. The eater changed keys. Voices rose from between stones, whispers wearing people I missed. Not words. Familiarity pressed into sound. A boy laughing like he couldn't stand still. A woman telling me to eat. A roar that had once been a symbol, not a person. I didn't look. Kane's hand brushed mine on the way past, quick, there and gone. Those are free, she murmured. Don't pay. Wasn't planning to, I said. And still had to unclench my jaw. Stark tossed his axe from hand to hand like a man keeping circulation honest. Lewine's eyes went blade bright. On your left, she warned. Shap. E peeled out of the thin air. Not a body, a summarized intention. It struck like a spoon, the kind you use to taste, not to serve. I let it clip me, let my heart hiccup, died, and fed the afterglow into resistance. When I came back, cold slid off my ribs like oil off fire. Learning, Fern said, barely approving. Trying to, I said, grinning too wide for a guy actively refusing possession. Frieren stepped forward. A line of curvature wrote itself between two waystones, then refused to be read. The eater's pressure hit it and had to choose, stop, or become polite. It stopped. Good. It pushed again. Harder. Loop plan, Fern said. Low, steady, right in my ear. 4 quick deaths, different outputs. Call each before you take it. I need the beat. Copy, I said, because I like being good at hard things when someone I trust is counting. She lifted one finger. I nodded. Shock, I said, and died. Green snapped. The stone's ring turned sharp enough to make teeth itch. Slip, I said, died, slid along Lewine's rail. Came back already mid-punch. Resist, I said, died, wore ice for armor for a heartbeat after. Borrow, I said, died, and let Kane's water trick run backward, pull. Ing my last 2 steps with me into now like I'd looked over my shoulder and found them waiting. It wasn't pretty. It worked. The eater's pressure hesitated. I'd fed it 4 flavors that didn't align. Good. Confusion is the only kindness you owe a predator. Spend slower, Fern said, hand on my spine, linking more than timing now. It felt like a weight belt made of calm. I listened. The chorus tries a duet. It showed me. Not a shadow this time, a recipe card written in my handwriting, neat and cruel. Return sequence. Cost scribbled at the bottom with no decimals. It held the card up without hands. We can help. The pressure implied. Die once. Die clean. Die right. We will keep your edges sharp between. Pass, I said. It pressed. The waystones hummed in a major key that wanted to be home. My habit leaned toward yes like a plant toward a window. Deku, Fern said. Not a warning, a mark. Yeah, I said, and smiled. I know. I held the no with my chest and kept it there. The pressure backed off 2 millimeters and turned curious instead of demanding. Predators get interested when prey fails to act like prey or like a rival. When you choose third options enough times, you become an appetite's hobby. Lewine's shoulder checked me hard enough to move the world 1 inch. Don't flirt with it, she snapped. I'm flirting with you, I said, easy, and her scowl warmed in the middle like something thawing on purpose. Multiple targets, Stark said calmly, because of course there were. Thin figures extruded from the air between 3 stones, emissaries like the white coat on the pass, faces neutral. Movements correct. Behind them, a dip in light that was not a door and was also a mouth. Consultants, Kane sighed. I hate their little clipboards. They think they're here to audit, Fern said. They're here to lose. Non-lethal, I started to say, out of habit. Not today, Frieren said, voice gone very quiet. These are clean illusions. They'll refold. Good, Lewine said. I'm bored. Second toll. The first emissary moved like paperwork. Lewine cut its balance by changing the slope under its foot by 1.5 degrees. It fell through where the G round had been and left no dignity behind. Stark introduced the second to an axe with a long resume. Kane rewound a thrown spell into the hand that had thrown it and smiled like she'd taught a child to stop lying. The third emissary reached for me with an expression that said policy. I stepped in, avalanche step stacking joylessly, and hit once. 4 hits landed. I'm learning to tell the difference. The light dipped again. The mouth behind the suits parted and tasted the day. Return. Cost later. Cash only, I said, and amplified the word later until the air decided to be now instead. The core laughed in my ribs. I like being rude to hunger when it tries to be polite. Frieren's threads braided at last 3 curves finding a place to cross. Ready, she said, meaning do not die sloppy. Copy, I said, and looked at Fern. Her pupils were steady. Call it chord, I said. Threnody loop. You don't fight a song with a single note. We'd practiced this in a ditch with Snow complaining about being used. It had gone poorly. That's how you know it matters. Death 1. Shock I took it to pulse the field and make lines visible. Death 2. Slip I took it to step where Lewine's rails would be, not where they were. Death 3. Resist I took it to wear the eater's temperature for 1 heartbeat and not flinch. Between each, Fern tapped the same cast twice in 1 breath link hum. Mingso the beat didn't drop when my body did. Kane split the ground's thin moisture into 4 mirrors and turned them all a fraction back. Frieren fed my green into her silver and bent it into a shape that could carry more than pride. Stark stood where that shape would end if it failed, which is what courage does when it's practical. I came back the 4th time on my knees, hands flat, vision bright around the edges. The cord hung above the waystones like a net made of decision. The eater pressed down. The cord didn't catch it. It described it. The pressure flared, confused. Predators hate being named. They eat names if they can. This one couldn't not while 5 of us held a definition we agreed on. Now, Frieren said, eyes like winter windows finally open a crack. I stood. Avalanche step hummed. Link steadied. Tidalock kept the last 3 seconds where I could spend them instead of mourn them. The old curves guided weight where impulse would have wasted it. I hit the pressure where our net said is. Not where fear said looks like. The world made a sound like a book closing on a fly. Silence. Clean. Then the wind remembered its job and did it, brushing prayer grass with all the arrogance of weather. The eater withdrew, not with rage, not with injury. With interest sharpened into clarity. Again, it thought at me, almost tender. Another time, with less help. Bring more rules, I said. Breathing like a bellows. I collect them. It gone not gone. The waystones relaxed. My knees tried to fold again. Cost demanded its cut. Fern was already there, shoulder to mine. Sit, she said. Standing, I said, and sat anyway because I liked the shape of that obedience on me. The core's hum dropped by 2 notes. The afterglow clung late, reluctant, leaving green thread ads around my fingers like someone else's scarf. Hand, Frieren said. I gave it. She touched my wrist, tracing the faint, unseen sigils only mages can feel, where resonance braided, where link nested, where tidalock damped, where avalanche stacked. She nodded once, satisfied a test she hadn't announced had passed. You didn't spend just to be impressive, she said. You spent to compose. Trying a new vice, I said, closing my eyes long enough to be stupid. Kane knelt, scooped water from a cup into my palm, and backed the tremor from my fingers by a breath. Fun, she said softly, and kissed my knuckles like it was a lucky coin going back in a pocket. Scary, but fun. Lewine crouched on my other side and wiped a line of blood from my lip with her thumb, same as at the lodge, pretending it was nothing. You die pretty, she said, then added, throat tight, try living prettier. On it, I said, and grinned until the world believed me. Stark looked out over the stones, jaw set. It'll return. Everything returns, Frieren said. Some things we let in. Some we keep waiting outside until they learn manners. Tomorrow, I told the empty air that felt suspiciously like a schedule. Make an appointment. The heir, to its credit, did not answer. Field hospital, late afternoon. We made a camp a little down the slope where the grass agreed to be soft. The place smelled like crushed thyme and heat leaving rocks. Frieren ran through the checklist. Pulse, pupils, follow my finger, don't be charming, drink water. Yes, I saw the tremor. No, you may not die to hide it. I obeyed on instinct and because she'd been right too many times to enjoy proving her wrong. Report, she said, tired, edges fuzzy. No shadows inside the eyes, I said. She watched my mouth as I spoke. Not because she liked it maybe a little, but because over-enunciation is a warning sign. You'll crash, she decided. Eat first. Kane produced bread from somewhere like a stage magician smuggling a pigeon. She fed me with exaggerated tenderness until Lewine stole a bite out of pure principle. Stark napped with one ear. Frieren wrote nothing down and remembered everything. I dozed like a man being mugged by sleep. Edge of the heath, sunset. I woke to violet light and the sound of water being persuaded into tea. Kane was singing to the kettle in an accent that did not exist until she invented it. Lewine pretended not to listen. Frieren was standing, because sitting would have admitted she needed it. Frieren looked at the waystones without looking at them. I sat up. My body complained in a reasonable tone. Progress. Frieren noticed first, because she always does. Rate 5, I said, climbing to 6 with tea. She handed me a cup. 8 by bedtime. Goal-oriented, I said, delighted. Lewine leaned her shoulder into mine because it was easier than admitting she wanted to. You scared me, she said, as if offering me a weather report. You kissed me like someone who wanted to file a complaint with my ribs, I said. She snorted. I'll schedule a follow-up. Kane tucked herself under my other arm, idling her fingers against my sleeve. You didn't give it the recipe, she said, proud. It never gets the recipe, I said. Even from you, she asked. Quiet now. Especially from me, I said. I'm learning to cook without the dramatic flour. Frieren ate a noise like approval disguised as irritation. Finally, Frieren sat across from me and folded her hands. It watched how you refused to die at the end, she said. That will matter. I figured, I said. Killing it today would have been cheap. And it would just return a worse version. I don't want to teach it violence is the only conversation I speak fluently. Good, she said, and meant proud without showing it. Which means more. Stark yawned like a friendly lion and stretched. I liked your cord, he said. Sounded like a house being put back together. Steal that, Lewine told me. Write it in a speech. Make me mad. Please don't, Frieren said. Talking makes him cocky. I'm already cocky, I said. You're already cocky, 3 women said at once, and Stark laughed into his hands. Frieren's watch. Blue hour pav. Frieren. He slept like someone using rest for work. The tremor had gone. His breath steadied on the downbeat of whatever rhythm he thinks keeps people whole. His afterglow floated over him like green lint he'd forgotten to brush off. Frieren sat near. Not close, eyes on the link I can't see but feel. Lewine lay on her back, hands behind head, preet. Nding to measure stars so no one would see that her attention was pointed at where Deku was, not where they were. Kane made little water shapes with the steam until it spelled okay backward and then blushed because she'd accidentally been sincere at the air. The waystones did not hum for a while. Good, even obsessions sleep. I watched the places his power nested against ours like cats sharing a sun-warmed bench, silver and green. Discipline and slip, rails and rain. Old magic likes compatibility. It is not sentimental about it. When systems touch without complaint, you can choose, abuse, or use. Siri would be pleased and would avoid admitting it. The eater would learn and would avoid pretending otherwise. I would teach if he insisted on making the worst mistakes, and I would keep teaching if he refused to repeat them. That is the agreement I make with mortals who refuse to be merely that. He stirred and saw me watching. Caught, he said, smiling. Alive, I said. Keeping the habit, he said. Spend it slowly, I told him. Team economy, he said, and I did not roll my eyes because some slogans deserve to live. The quiet between, night. The wind dropped. The heat stopped pretending to be polite. I lay back with both arms pillow-stupid under my head and stared at a sky that looked like someone had spilled diamonds and then decided to call it art. Fern's silhouette leaned above me for a second. She didn't kiss me. She didn't have to. She placed 2 fingers just under my jaw, counted the beat, and let them rest there 1 heartbeat longer than clinical. 8, she said, as promised. Hot, I said. Medical, she corrected. Kane rolled over and stole half my blanket on general principle. Lewine pretended not to tuck the other half tighter over my legs. Stark snored like gentle thunder. Frieren watched just enough to make even the dark behave. Somewhere beyond the stones, patience tuned itself to our breathing and wrote tomorrow's menu. Good. We'd Bill. Rode out. Gray gold morning. Lovely weather for people who didn't get eaten. The heather did its purple thing without asking permission. Birds tried insults and gave up. We packed. Fern did the final check like it was a ritual, and maybe it was. Lewine tied my cloak knot with a pull that said don't you dare. Kane tapped my chest twice. Alive, alive. Stark handed me bread I didn't need and I ate it like I did. Frieren set the pace. 3 bends past the last waystone, the air picked a thread and pulled. A blue seam opened. Narrow, wrong here. It tasted like home I hadn't agreed to call home anymore. Kane's head snapped up. Portal, not a door, Frieren said, already lifting a hand. An attempt. Through the seam, for 1 impolite heartbeat, a silhouette leaned broad shoulders, a cape. A jaw I'd memorized because I used to breathe courage like it was oxygen and he'd been my favorite tree. Don't, Fern said, not to the portal, to me. I wasn't, I said, and for once, I was telling the truth. The seam stitched closed with a sound like a book refusing to be misshelved. The wind exhaled. Lewine looked at me sideways. Complicated. Later, I said. Good, she said. I like watching you do hard things loudly. Kane squeezed my arm. We'll meet him when we're ready to be new. We already are, Fern said. Frieren's eyes rested on me, not unkind. Keep your schedule, she said. Make everything else wait its turn. I nodded, tasted the morning, and let the day be simple again. We walked. Somewhere behind us, the eater studied the idea of a chord and sharpened its listening. Somewhere ahead, the seam would open properly or not at all. My habit and my promise took a step together without arguing. Living mattered more than winning. So we lived, and the game hated us for it. End of Chapter 6. Chapter 7. A promise that outlives us. Market Road outside Iden, bright morning. Sun, bread, noise. The kind of day where danger forgets your name for an hour. Kane bartered a ribbon with a laugh and 2 lies that made the stallholder happier anyway. Lewine judged apples like they'd personally offended Winter. Stark carried 3 baskets and the idea of being useful. Fern checked prices with the quiet ruthlessness of a spreadsheet. Frieren stood by the book cart and frowned delicately at a grammar from a century that shouldn't have survived this well. I watched it all and let the core hum low, tame. The afterglow stayed close, a green shawl refusing to be dramatic. You're thinking loud, Fern said at my shoulder. I'm rehearsing not dying today, I said. Good, she said. Keep practicing. A boy passed us with a wooden sword and the full vocabulary of future heroics. He saw my torn jacket, saw the knot scar under it, and saluted like a secret. I saluted back. Kane looped the ribbon around my wrist in a bow. For luck, she said, tying joy onto me like it was legal tender. Team economy appreciates the deposit, I said. Lewine rolled her eyes. Stop branding our feelings. Frieren closed the grammar with a soft snap. We should leave before the road gets the wrong idea about us, she murmured. Wrong idea? Stark asked. That we're going to have a quiet day, she said. The wind shifted. Somewhere, something practiced patience. Iden's East Gate, afternoon. The warning came as a silence under noise. Dogs stopped mid-argument. A cart wheel didn't squeak. The air held its breath for someone who wasn't us. Company, Stark said. 2 figures crested the ridge-white coats, tidy steps, faces politely blank. Consultants, again. Between them, the light made a shallow dent. Not a door. A mouth practicing vowels. Lewine flexed her fingers. I hate their shoes. Fern planted her staff. Rules, she said. No cheap deaths. No heroics to impress the air. Copy, I said. The first consultant lifted a hand with policy in it. Disclosure, it said. We are here to test recovery conditions. Consent, I said. You don't have it. Documentation, it offered, and a sheaf of icicle-thin pages fluttered into existence. Kane reached up and tore the top sheet neatly in half. Oops, she said, smiling like summer. Fine. The second consultant sighed. Procedure 1. Remove the. Frieren's finger drew a silver line across the sentence. Declined. The light behind them thickened an eater's breath, interested again. Hungry academia. Short. Frieren said. Sharp. I agreed. We moved. East Gate. First exchange. Lewine carved the cobbles into rails the consultants couldn't see. Kane pull. Ed ran out of air and braided it over the rails like friendly ghosts. Stark took the left side consultant with a swing so honest it could teach ethics. Frieren curved a thread around the mouth in the light, pinning its grammar shut. I stepped into the first consultant's reach and let the avalanche step stack without any death to oil it. 1, 2, 3 beat clean 4, 5 Frieren's knees, in my head 6. My fist landed as a stacked argument, not a punch. The consultant folded like paperwork that had finally been misfiled correctly. The light tasted me. Return. No, I said, out loud. Not for effect. Not today. It pressed. Disappointed. I held. The urge to spend the easy coin of a flashy death shivered and died on its own when no one fed it. Good, Frieren said, not smiling, sounding like someone marking an exam and pleased at the question you didn't answer. The second consultant tried to turn Kane's water into ice. Lewine kicked the temperature itself sideways. It slipped and broke into polite shards. Silence landed. The light thinned back into air. Later, it brushed my core, respectful now the way wolves respect fences. Book it, I told the sky. We're busy. Stone bridge over the Natal, late afternoon. We left town with bread, thanks, and the sense of being told to visit again when we weren't so interesting. The bridge took the river's weight with old-smelling patience. Kane walked backward in front of me, ribbon ends fluttering. Tell me your rule again, she said, teasing. The one I like. No dying where patience is possible, I said. And warn Frieren if I must. Frieren. Dry. Preferably 5 seconds beforehand. Minimum, I said, solemn. Lewine leaned on the rail, watching Whitewater argue with itself. You staying? She asked, voice casual like an ankle over a knee. In this world, I said. In this us, she said. I looked at all of them. The bridge, the river, the ribbon at my wrist. I'm not running home, I said. Not yet, maybe not for a long time. Stark exhaled like a boulder deciding to relax. Kane lit up like a street at festival. Frieren's shoulders unknotted a millimeter. Frieren's eyes did a small, private thing that looked exactly like relief refusing attention. Good, Lewine said, pretending to be stern. Project. Don't be a statue continues. Quarterly targets, I agreed. Disgusting, Frieren muttered, but the edge of her mouth betrayed her. Frieren's path, violet hour, Pav, Frieren. He chooses staying like some choose weapons, practical first, then beautiful. We walked a ridge where the wind liked my hair and disliked his. He led it. He's learning when not to wrestle what won't change. You're making a home, I said. It could have been an accusation. It wasn't. I'm making a schedule, he said. Home happens if we keep making good ones. You'll outlive them, I said, to measure the ache, not to cause it. I'll outlive everyone, he said. Then, softer, I'd like to spend the wait with people who insist on living, loudly, exactly now. Quote, I held his gaze and did not blink for once. Acceptable. He laughed quietly. You're hard to romance. I am easy to keep company with, I said. For those who don't require drama. We stopped where the view lied about how far the mountains were. I offered my hand, palm up, small and momentary. He took it like it weighed something. We stood that way until the wind ran out of adjectives. Purely pragmatic, I said. Obviously, he said. Do purely pragmatic handholds always make the horizon sit down and listen? Occasionally, I said, and let my fingers stay. Frieren's rulebook. Campfire later, Pav. Frieren. He sat with his back against the pine and allowed rest like it was a technique, not surrender. Progress is a verb I will keep. New clause, I said, taking the place beside him that a mathematician would call adjacent and a poet would mislabel. He straightened a little because he has learned that my clauses come with teeth. Hit me. If the Eater forces a choice between a ceremonial death that looks smart and an ugly life that costs more, you pick the ugly life, I said. Our time, not its. He didn't wait. Agreed. He means it. People say that and then spend themselves anyway. He means it and will fail sometimes and will mean it again. That's the work. I touched my forehead to Hisone steady, claimed heartbeat, the link humming quiet. You're very annoyingly good, I said, but only the last word was insult. Tall compliment from you, he said. Don't die to enjoy it, I said. I'm busy living, he said, and did not move away when I didn't either. The lattice kiln, midnight raid. Bandits, not demons. Human bad habits in masks. They chose the clayworks outside town because fire and fear make decent accomplices. Leave, their leader said, waving a sword he'd never had to sharpen himself. No, Lewine said. He blinked. We have numbers. Not enough, Stark said, and stepped forward to demonstrate math. The fight was clean on purpose. Cinematic. Short. Stark broke the leader's confidence at the wrist. Fern took two with staff and timing. They stayed down without needing to be humiliated. Kane turned the hose line into a compliant snake that tied ankles and apologized about it. Lewine moved like cruelty with guardrails, taught three men the 10-degree difference between standing and falling. I didn't die. I didn't need to. When it was over, the kiln still glowed. A potter stood in the doorway, flower of ash on her cheeks, outrage cooling back into craft. You staying? She asked no one and everyone. For a night, Frieren said. For a while, I said, and the potter's mouth made the shape of a gratitude she didn't have time to deliver in words. 4 doors, 4 beats. We found a clean inn and 4 rooms that didn't smell like bags. The hallway held its breath like it had seen this kind of logistics before. Kane tugged me into her doorway first. You promised breathing room, she said. I did, I said. She spun me, kissed me laughing, bright and wicked and gentle at the end. There, she said, forehead against mine. Room to breathe. Every time with you feels like air, I said. Good, she said. I hate holding my breath. Down the hall, Fern leaned in her frame like a checkpoint I was allowed to want. Your pulse. 8, I said, because I like giving H. The answer before the question finishes. She stepped forward, set her forehead to mine, counted for herself, and didn't move away for a long second. Okay, she said, and the permission lived in my chest for hours. Lewine was halfway to closing her door when she caught me looking. She caught me by the jacket and kissed me hard against the jam, short breaths and teeth and a hand in my hair like an argument she enjoyed winning. No promises, she said, breath warm. Only momentum. I'm late to funerals, I said. Bring flowers, she said, and shut the door with a smirk that promised we'd schedule the rest. Frieren's door stood open on purpose. I leaned on her frame and let the quiet move first. You chose to stay, she said, not asking. I chose us, I said. That's a category error, she said dryly. But I accept. I held out my hand. She took it. No show. Wry hand hold, small and devastating. The world tilted a degree kinder. We'll go north in the morning, she said. The past remembers us fondly. It remembers your sarcasm, I said. Occasionally, she said, and released my hand as if good examples should be rationed. Roofline, last watch. I climbed to the roof to make sure the night hadn't put anything stupid in writing. The town breathed. Stove smoke, a drunk's song, a dog reconsidering a feud. My core purred like a cat that had decided the new house was fine. Return. The patient pressure brushed, remote and almost courteous. Return alone, and we will sing longer. Later, I said, maybe never. Book gets to choose sometimes. It didn't argue. I like that in a monster. A blue seam cracked the sky 2 roofs over cleaner than yesterday, arrogant. Wind sucked toward it like the world tried on a second throat. It opened the width of my hand. A silhouette leaned in. Not a ghost. Someone from home. Broad shoulders, cape, a jaw that had once fixed the horizon for me. His voice carried like a memory shouted down a well. Deku. I didn't move. The seam flickered. Another shape behind him short, square, angry like friendship. The call came again, tinny through the wrong air. desperate and proud at once. Fern's steps sounded behind me, soft. She didn't touch me. She didn't have to. Rule? I asked, not looking away. No dying for the nostalgia, she said. No running before breakfast. Pragmatic, I said. Frieren's voice drifted from the stair. Schedules, she said. Keep yours. Kane popped up, hair wild, ribbon trailing, took one look, and threaded her fingers with mine without fanfare. Lawine appeared last, leaned on the kai. Mney like she'd been waiting to judge this exact moment for years. You going? She asked. Not tonight, I said, and felt the truth settle like a warm stone. I lifted my free hand and drew a slow, disrespectfully casual curve in the air. Frieren's trick, my accent. The seam's edge balked, offended by manners. It didn't close. It waited. Tomorrow, I told the hole in my life, kindly. Make an appointment. The wind let go. The seam thinned to a thread and then a rumor and then the dark. We stood there and counted our breaths. Not synchronized, harmonized. Kane bumped my shoulder. We'll be ready, she said. Obviously, Lawine added, as if threatening the next chapter. Stark snored below us like a promise someone could keep. The town's kiln sighed and kept the shape of heat. I awked at the world I wasn't done with and let the habit and the promise walk in step. Living mattered more than winning. We were annoyingly good at both. Tomorrow, I said again. This time, the night said nothing back. End of Book 1.